Welcome to Chinese Novel Audiobook. Chapter 61, The Perfect Second in Command, Don't Underestimate Me. Izanami-kun, she's so pitiful. Hinata looked at Karen, who was leaving with a shadow clone, with sympathy. She had thought that she was timid and humble enough in front of Izanami when she was a child. But compared to Karen, she was still a little lacking. The look in that girl's eyes was heartbreaking. There are pitiful people like this everywhere. There are even more pitiful people than her. Izanami patted Hinata's head and smiled, we can't help everyone. All we can do is protect the important people around us. Yeah, Hinata nodded vigorously. She wasn't some kind of saint, but she was only feeling emotional because Karen was a member of Izanami's clan. Looking at Shino Aburame, who had returned, Izanami asked, what scrolls do they have? It's the Scroll of Heaven. Shino Aburame replied. That's perfect, we have the Scroll of Earth. Izanami took out the team's scroll and threw it to Shino Aburame, saying, I'll leave these two scrolls to you, Shino. Hearing this, Shino Aburame seemed to understand something and said, our scrolls are already complete. Aren't we going straight to the central tower? Izanami turned to look in a certain direction and said, not in a hurry, there's still a problem to solve. Hinata's expression changed slightly. Recalling what Izanami had said in the bathroom, and combining it with the information she had gathered with her Byakugan, she couldn't help but ask, Izanami-kun, are you going to deal with that sand ninja with the gourd on his back? No, it's someone even stronger than him. Izanami shook his head and instructed Hinata and Shino Aburame, you guys go to the outside of the central tower and wait for me first. After I solve that problem, I'll go and meet up with you. Yes. Knowing how strong Izanami was, Hinata nodded obediently. Seeing that Hinata didn't insist on going with him, Shino Aburame naturally nodded as well, I understand. After separating from Hinata and Shino Aburame, Izanami flashed away towards Team 7. That's right, the second person Izanami was preparing to change the fate of was Sasuke Uchiha. With Izanami's current configuration, the drop rate of entries would only increase if he defeated a cage-level powerhouse. Neither Zabuza Momochi nor Raiga Kurosuke, nor Haku and Rinmara, had dropped any entries. Because Izanami's strength was far too great compared to them. Defeating them would only have a very small chance of dropping low-level and high-level entries. Izanami had tried killing enemies, and also created shadow clones with very little chakra, killing people together with the shadow clones, but still no entries dropped. This meant that shadow clones and killing people could not increase the drop rate. And the number of cage-level powerhouses in this era was very limited. In this situation, there were only two ways for Izanami to drop entries and decompose them into points. One was to see if the talent entry system had any other hidden mechanisms to increase the drop rate. The second was to drop super high-level entries to decompose into points. The highest entry for a cage-level powerhouse was only purple, and decomposing it would only yield 4-digit points. And above purple, there were also gold and red entries, and even unknown levels. Decomposing gold and red entries would be random 5-digit and 6-digit points. If he was lucky, decomposing a red entry might randomly give him more than 990,000 points, directly upgrading the red entry to an unknown new level at a 1:1 ratio. Before finding a new mechanism, Hinata, Sasuke Uchiha, and Naruto Uzumaki were Izanami's targets. Among these three, Izanami valued Sasuke Uchiha the most. Because his talent was the best and his progress was the fastest. As long as he raised his strength, Izanami's drop rate would be higher. Therefore, Izanami had to change Sasuke Uchiha's fate, keep him in Konoha, and make it convenient to farm entries at any time. Moreover, Sasuke Uchiha's loyalty was no less than Karen's. After being defeated by Naruto Uzumaki in the original story, Sasuke Uchiha gave up all fame, fortune, and money, and wholeheartedly served Naruto Uzumaki as a workhorse outside, and almost killed his daughter because he didn't go home for several years. In the One Piece world, he was the perfect second in command like Roronoa Zoro. Izanami would naturally not give such a talent to Orochimaru. A flash of white light in his eyes, Izanami's speed became a bit faster. At this time, Team 7 was confronting a grass ninja. You guys have the Scroll of Heaven, you should really want the Scroll of Earth in my hand. Orochimaru, disguised as a grass ninja with face copy technique, shook the Scroll of Earth in his hand, and then, under the wide-eyed gaze of Team 7, raised his head and stuffed the scroll into his mouth. Swallowed it, he actually ate the scroll. Naruto Uzumaki was dumbfounded. What is this guy's body made of? Secret technique, or bloodline limit? Sasuke Uchiha analyzed calmly. As for Sakura Haruno, she was already trembling with fear, hiding behind Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki. Then, let's begin, the scroll battle. Orochimaru, who had swallowed the scroll of earth, smiled playfully at Team 7, I will do my best. Boom. An invisible wave of air roared out of Orochimaru's body. Team 7 was first in a daze, and then all slumped to the ground, pale and breathing rapidly. Sasuke Uchiha, as the strongest member of the team, vomited on the spot. Is it an illusion? No, it's killing intent. Sasuke Uchiha looked at Orochimaru, his eyes filled with fear, just like when he faced Itachi Uchiha. Just the killing intent made us see our own death. Who exactly is this guy? Why is there such an existence in the Chunin exams? Although both were filled with killing intent, the sand ninja with the gourd on his back was not at the same level as the grass ninja in front of him at all. No, it should be said, not on the same dimension. Damn it, don't think you can scare this great me. At this time, Naruto Uzumaki's voice came to his ears. Sasuke Uchiha subconsciously turned his head to look. When he saw that Naruto Uzumaki not only didn't vomit, but also stood up gritting his teeth, making hand seals. For some reason, Sasuke Uchiha's fear of Orochimaru disappeared instantly. What was he afraid of if even this loser wasn't afraid? Thinking of this, Sasuke Uchiha's eyes suddenly became firm, and his black pupils turned into scarlet double Tomo Sharingan. Don't underestimate this great me is a man who will become Hokage. At this time, Naruto Uzumaki also shouted loudly at Orochimaru, multi-shadow clone technique. Bang bang bang, a series of sounds like balloons popping resounded throughout the forest. At the same time, each sound brought up a cloud of white smoke. These smokes formed a white fog with a very amazing area. When a gust of wind dispersed the fog, 300 Naruto Uzumaki appeared in the forest. Sasuke, Sakura, you all hide behind. The shadow clones lifted up Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno, and then handed the two to the back. The main body and the remaining shadow clones made hand seals and shouted arrogantly, watch this great me blow you away in one breath. Seeing Naruto Uzumaki creating so many shadow clones in one breath, and this hand seal, Orochimaru, who was originally playing cat and mouse, suddenly changed his expression. Such chakra could this kid be? Wind release, great breakthrough. 300 shouts rang out in unison. Chapter 62, The Inflated Naruto, Step on the Point Brother. Woo! The howling wind, like a typhoon passing through, echoed through half of the forest of death. Especially the examinees who were relatively close to Team 7, had only just turned their heads towards the direction the wind was coming from when the strong wind had already swept over them. Examinees who were using body flicker technique to move were blown away by the strong wind and crashed into the towering trees. Examinees who were walking on the ground were like being suddenly pushed hard by someone, falling directly to the ground. Crackling, rumbling. Amidst the howling wind, there were faint sounds of objects breaking and collapsing. The scene zoomed in, and it could be seen that the airflow in a certain area was distorted, like a whirlpool in the ocean. The towering trees within the whirlpool all bent over, and finally, unable to withstand it, they snapped and crashed heavily to the ground, stirring up dust and mist into the sky. Fortunately, these strong winds were not sharp, and the forest of death was a primeval forest, with each towering tree requiring more than a dozen people to encircle, making them extremely tough. Otherwise, even more trees would have been broken, and perhaps this area would have become a wasteland. Even so, this scene was no less impressive than the wind release. Great task of airflow manipulation used by Temari leading the wind release squad against the Ten Tails in the Fourth Shinobi World War, and perhaps even stronger. When the strong wind disappeared, the forest where Team 7 was located had already become a mess. Naruto Uzumaki's 300 shadow clones had all vanished, blown away by the wind release he had unleashed. This is the power of the dead last. Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno, who had been sent behind by the shadow clones and were using a towering tree as cover, looked at the devastated forest with trembling eyes. Clearly, Sasuke Uchiha did not expect Naruto Uzumaki's strength to be so powerful. You're kidding, right? Naruto is actually this strong. Sakura Haruno also covered her mouth, her eyes filled with disbelief. Due to the mission in the Land of Waves, they did not encounter Zabuza Momochi. Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno's impression of Naruto Uzumaki was still at the stage of being toyed with by Kakashi Hatake and being frightened by the demon brothers. The only bright spot was his massive chakra and the fact that he had somehow learned the multiple shadow clone technique. But they never expected that Naruto Uzumaki would actually possess the power to create natural disasters. If he was the dead last, then what was she, the honors student? So, she was the weakest existence in the team. Ha ha ha. At this moment, a burst of laughter entered their ears. Following the direction the sound came from, they saw Naruto Uzumaki standing on a fallen tree, hands on his hips, laughing triumphantly. Have you seen how awesome I am? This is my true strength. Whether it's Izayoi, or Hinata, or smelly Sasuke, or that bushy brows, they will all become my underlings. A very powerful combination technique. I was almost killed by you. Suddenly, a voice rang in Naruto Uzumaki's ear, stopping his laughter abruptly. Before Naruto Uzumaki could turn his head or use body flicker technique to create distance, two large snakes, like ropes, bound his body, leaving only his abdomen exposed. Then, a completely unharmed figure slowly emerged from the ground, giving him a playful smile. Damn it, quickly let me go. Naruto Uzumaki struggled constantly, and his eyes unconsciously turned into red vertical pupils. Seeing these eyes, Orochimaru smiled and said, as expected, it's you, you little brat. What do you mean, as expected, it's me? What are you talking about? Naruto Uzumaki shouted, if you have the guts, let me go and then have a fair fight. Hee. Orochimaru smiled and said, if you hadn't used that combination technique just now, I wouldn't have minded playing with you. But now, you should be quiet. After saying that, Orochimaru lifted Naruto Uzumaki's clothes with one hand, and the 5 fingers of the other hand were entwined with blue chakra flames, these flames forming the 5 characters of wind, fire, water, earth, and lightning. Let go of Naruto. At this moment, Sasuke Uchiha's voice came from far away, and his figure appeared out of thin air next to Orochimaru, kicking out. Unfortunately, his speed was still a little slow. 5 elements seal. Orochimaru's 5 fingers were like claws, striking Naruto Uzumaki's abdomen with one palm, while simultaneously raising his other hand to block Sasuke Uchiha's incoming kick. Naruto Uzumaki was sent flying by the palm strike, and Orochimaru was also kicked away by Sasuke Uchiha. Fire release, Great Dragon Fire Technique. Sasuke Uchiha pressed his attack, quickly forming hand seals and spitting out a wisp of flame that grew into a fire dragon, roaring towards Orochimaru. Orochimaru, who had already landed, looked at Sasuke Uchiha's double Tomo Sharingan through the fire dragon, his eyes filled with greed. At this moment, he seemed to have returned to the time when he secretly watched Itachi Uchiha training. Such speed, and opening the double Tomo Sharingan at this age. Perhaps this young man is not much inferior to his brother. He must obtain such a body. So, Orochimaru quickly formed hand seals, earth release, earth flow wall. With a bang, a thick and wide wall rose from the ground, blocking the roaring fire dragon. Sasuke Uchiha, who had already stimulated his cells with lightning release chakra to increase his speed, did not go around to the back, but took out a kunai, quickly cut the snakes that were binding Naruto Uzumaki, and then pulled Naruto Uzumaki, rushing towards the forest. Sasuke, where are you taking me? Naruto Uzumaki, who had already swelled up, shouted loudly, quickly put me down, I'm going to make that snake-playing guy look good. Idiot, can't you see it yet? Sasuke Uchiha scolded in a low voice, your level of wind release can't hurt him at all, we are not on the same level as him. Hearing this, Naruto Uzumaki finally woke up. That's right, he only knows that one combination technique now. The opponent only needs to use earth release to burrow into the ground to easily avoid his attacks. Where do you think you're going? Sasuke Uchiha's speed was very fast. If he was escaping alone, perhaps Orochimaru would need to spend some time to catch up. Unfortunately, he has a burden by his side. Before they could leave the wasteland and enter the forest, Orochimaru's voice came to their ears. Turning their heads to look, Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki were almost scared to death. They saw Orochimaru's body bending, like a human snake, but rushing towards them at the speed of an arrow. That terrifying face, that hideous smile, even if they escaped this time, would probably leave a considerable shadow on Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki. Multiple shadow clone technique. Naruto Uzumaki quickly formed hand seals, wanting to create hundreds or thousands of shadow clones again. Unfortunately, his chakra is now extremely chaotic, and he can only create 20 or so shadow clones. As soon as these shadow clones came out, they quickly formed hand seals, preparing to use wind release, great breakthrough again. But in the next second, these shadow clones, like Sasuke Uchiha when he first learned the great fireball technique, could only spit out a small stream of air. How could this be? Naruto Uzumaki widened his eyes and shouted in disbelief. It's the sealing technique from just now. Sasuke Uchiha was sweating profusely, becoming more and more certain that this guy was definitely not a genin. Seeing that he couldn't even escape, Sasuke Uchiha directly threw Naruto Uzumaki to the side, turned around and rushed towards Orochimaru, shouting, "Dead last, I'll buy you time, you go outside to find reinforcements." "No way, I can't do something like abandoning my comrades." Naruto Uzumaki, who had landed, got up and was about to rush over to fight alongside Sasuke Uchiha. "Hurry up and go, now is not the time to be willful." Sasuke Uchiha shouted while throwing ninja tools at Orochimaru, "This guy is not a genin, the commotion just now must have attracted the attention of the proctors. If you go find reinforcements now, we can all survive, otherwise you and I and Sakura will all die. Since that's the case, then I can't leave you even more." Naruto Uzumaki said with firm eyes, and then formed hand seals again, shouting, "Shadow clone technique." With a few bangs, several shadow clones appeared around Naruto Uzumaki, and then dispersed, rushing towards the outside of the Forest of Death. As for the main body, it rushed towards Orochimaru. Little did he know that his righteousness would harm Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke Uchiha, who had initially mastered lightning release chakra stimulation of cells, was a few points faster than Rock Lee, who was wearing weights. Coupled with the Sharingan's observation ability, even Orochimaru would need to use snake-style ninjutsu or earth release to catch him. Now that Naruto Uzumaki had entered the fray, not only did Sasuke Uchiha not have the ability to go all out, but he also had to constantly consider the safety of this comrade. Orochimaru also noticed this, so he changed his target from Sasuke Uchiha to Naruto Uzumaki. In just a few rounds, he let Sasuke Uchiha fall into his trap, and both he and Naruto Uzumaki were trapped in the swampy ground, and were also bound into rice dumplings by large snakes. Just as Orochimaru formed hand seals with both hands, stretched his neck and flew over, preparing to plant the cursed seal of heaven on Sasuke Uchiha's neck. Bang! A figure appeared out of thin air, a punch hitting Orochimaru's face squarely, the powerful force as if the fist was about to sink into his head. Orochimaru's head was like a baseball, directly blasted away by the punch, along with his body flying out. The person who threw the punch was none other than the punctual guy who arrived late, Izayoi. Chapter 63, Meatball Series Gaia Energy Cannon. 16 Knights. Seeing 16 knights suddenly appear, both Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki revealed ecstatic expressions, as if they had found a savior. Especially Sasuke Uchiha, who felt a strange sense of security in his heart. "I didn't expect you guys to be so unlucky, actually being targeted by this guy." 16 knights grabbed Naruto and Sasuke, one in each hand, pulled them out of the swamp, and then threw them back onto the ground. Sasuke Uchiha instantly grasped the key point and quickly asked, 16 knights, do you know who this guy is?" "I didn't know before, I just sensed his chakra, which isn't something a genin could possess." 16 knights looked at Orochimaru, whose head had returned to normal and whose body was slowly standing up, and said, "But now, his identity is obvious at a glance. One of the legendary Sannin, and also one of Konoha's S-rank missing nin, Orochimaru. It's actually him." Sasuke Uchiha's pupils shrank, and he looked at Orochimaru in disbelief. "A big figure in the history books, why would he appear here?" "I don't know, but he's staring at you with a clear goal, maybe there's something he's after on you." "Is it for the Sharingan?" Sasuke Uchiha understood immediately, his expression grave. 16 knights, what do we do next?" The implication being, "I'll listen to you next, do we fight or run?" It's not going to be easy to escape from the hands of such a strong person. The only thing we can do now is to stall until reinforcements arrive. 16 knights looked at Sasuke Uchiha and smiled, "Do you still have the ability to fight?" "Of course." Sasuke Uchiha's lips curled up. "This great one is here too, this great one can continue to fight." Naruto Uzumaki emphasized his presence. 16 knights grinned and said, "In that case, let us experience the strength of a legendary ninja." Hehe. At this time, Orochimaru was also sizing up 16 knights, praising, "I didn't expect that in this generation, besides the descendant of the Uchiha and that little brat, there would actually be such an excellent young man. Konoha, it truly is a cradle of geniuses. But now, I don't have time to play your little ninja games." After saying that, Orochimaru used the snake-style body flicker technique again, and rushed towards 16 knights and the others. Just like what 16 knights said, he was in a hurry now, and had to plant the cursed seal of heaven on Sasuke Uchiha before the rescue team arrived. However, Orochimaru, who only focused on Sasuke Uchiha, obviously didn't expect that a monster would actually appear in this year's new generation. His figure had just darted out when 16 knights' figure disappeared from the trio in front. As if teleporting, 16 knights appeared in front of Orochimaru out of nowhere, holding a kunai in his hand, with wisps of electric arcs, stabbing towards Orochimaru's head. This scene made Orochimaru's pupils shrink slightly. A familiar way of moving, but the speed is even more amazing than Sasuke Uchiha's. At the same time, Orochimaru reacted quickly, opening his mouth and spitting out a sword blade, extending it to break 16 knights' kunai, and attempting to pierce 16 knights' neck. This kind of response was unprecedented, and if one didn't know the information, one might be tricked. However, just as the sword blade broke the kunai, 16 knights' figure disappeared. Replacing it in Orochimaru's eyes was Sasuke Uchiha jumping into the air, spitting out a wisp of flame from his mouth, which quickly turned into a huge fire dragon. Fire style, Great Dragon Fire Technique. Sasuke Uchiha, whose chakra reserves far surpassed those in the original work, preferred and was better at using the Great Dragon Fire Technique rather than the Great Fireball Technique under 16 Knights training. Looking at the flying fire dragon, Orochimaru didn't dodge or evade, letting the fire dragon devour him. In the flames, Orochimaru's body turned into a pool of liquid. This is Earth Replacement. Sasuke Uchiha's expression changed slightly in the air. After landing, his eyes stared straight at the ground, the tomo in his eyes spinning wildly, afraid that Orochimaru would emerge from the ground again like before. Whoosh! At this moment, a sound of air being torn apart came. A huge python shot out from behind a large tree that had fallen to the ground, opening its bloody mouth, trying to swallow Sasuke Uchiha into its belly. Sasuke Uchiha smiled disdainfully, and then his figure disappeared out of thin air, appearing below the python, kicking the python's head, violently closing the python's open mouth. But the next second, Sasuke Uchiha's expression changed drastically. Only to see the python's abdomen suddenly rupture, a figure drilling out, and stretching out its palm, turning into a swarm of snakes. Hidden Shadow Snake Hands. This kind of surprise attack caught Sasuke Uchiha off guard. Having just used Shadow Dance Leaf and not yet recovering, he could only watch helplessly as the swarm of snakes was about to bind him. At this moment, the voice that filled him with a sense of security sounded again. Wind Style, Wind Cutter Technique. The newest and most complete novels are at Luju Literature Bar. 16 Knights and the transparent white wind blade appeared almost out of thin air. The amazingly sharp wind blade not only instantly cut off the swarm of snakes, but also cut the huge python in two. "It's you again, you little brat." Seeing 16 knights hindering him from planting the cursed seal again, Orochimaru's mood instantly became unhappy. Just as he was about to give 16 knights a lesson, his expression changed slightly. Only to see 16 knights, after retracting his palm into his sleeve after waving a wind blade, suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a piece of flame, submerging Orochimaru, who had just drilled out of the python's abdomen and had no time to use the replacement technique or earth style. Ah, ah, ah. Orochimaru, who was swallowed by the flames, let out a miserable scream. 16 knights pressed his advantage, jumping several meters into the air from the spot. "Sasuke, get back." 16 knights spoke to remind, and then raised his hands. A blue energy ball immediately appeared between his hands, rapidly expanding like a balloon. Sasuke Uchiha quickly disappeared in a flash. When he reappeared, he had already come to Naruto Uzumaki's side, who was watching 16 knights and Sasuke Uchiha's performance in a daze. Before he could pull Naruto Uzumaki behind a tree to hide, 16 knights' voice came from his ear. "Gaia Energy Cannon." Turning his head to look, he saw 16 knights holding a huge energy ball rotating at ultra-high speed. This energy ball was originally blue on the outside and white on the inside, but in the next second, the white inside was replaced by orange-red, and then the entire energy ball became a large fireball. The size was not much different from the Great Fireball Technique, but it contained countless times more energy than the Great Fireball Technique. With a loud shout, 16 knights threw this orange-red energy ball towards the bottom. Boom! A deafening explosion resounded through half of the Forest of Death. The special Jonin and Jonin who had already intervened in this exam, and even the ninja troops dispatched by the Anbu, saw a huge fire tornado raging in the sky above the forest ahead, taller than the trees. What a terrifying fire style. Is it a compound ninjutsu with wind style enhancement? Even the all-rounder Jonin, who had mastered at least 2 types of nature transformation, were shocked by this scene. First a large-scale wind style, and then a fire style of this level. Could it be someone is fighting Orochimaru? Thinking of this possibility, some ninjas' expressions changed again. If that was the case, wouldn't that mean that there was a monster in this year's Chunin exams? Chapter 64. The second exam ends. This is the ninjutsu Izayoi has developed himself. Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto hid behind a fallen towering tree, their eyes filled with horror as they looked at the tornado-like rotating fire dragon. Gulp. Uzumaki Naruto even swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and said in a trembling voice, so powerful. He originally thought that his multi-shadow clone technique plus wind style, great breakthrough, was already extremely powerful. As a result, he didn't expect that, besides him, Izayoi had also mastered a large-scale ninjutsu. Moreover, he didn't even need to use shadow clones, or even hand seals. This was simply not at the same level. Uzumaki Naruto's inflated heart was instantly beaten back to its original shape. Let's go. At this moment, Izayoi also appeared behind Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto, and took the two away in a flash. Not long after the three left, a figure emerged from the ground not far away, his body covered with burn marks. It was Orochimaru. Orochimaru made a vomiting sound, his mouth was like a tear, opening like a bucket. Then a body covered with mucus crawled out of his mouth. Damn brat, he ruined my good deed. Using the Orochi-style body replacement technique, Orochimaru, who spat out a new body, first cursed in a hoarse voice, and then grinned and said, but that kind of chakra, and the speed of casting the technique, is really an amazing talent. Looking at the fire dragon tornado that was raging towards the forest, which would set the forest on fire if no one stopped it, Orochimaru added, what a familiar technique. I didn't expect that the technique that Minato and that idiot didn't perfect was actually done by a new generation. It seems that the Konoha windmill, which has been stopped for many years, is about to turn again. Orochimaru glanced at the direction where Izayoi and the others left, then looked at a certain direction, and then self-mockingly muttered, what is mine will eventually not escape. Sasuke-kun, your body will definitely be mine. After speaking, Orochimaru's body slowly sank into the ground and left the forest of death. Not long after, a large number of figures appeared in a flash in this forest. There were Anbu wearing cloaks and cat-faced masks. There were also specially appointed Jonin and Jonin wearing green vests. Are we too late? Materi Anko's expression was uncertain. Put out the fire quickly. The rest of the ninjas used water style together to extinguish the fire dragon tornado. On the other side, after Izayoi and the others left, they immediately went to pick up Haruno Sakura, who was hiding, and then teleported 2 or 3 miles away before stopping. Team 7 leaned against a tree, breathing heavily. That Orochimaru didn't chase after us, right? Uchiha Sasuke still looked at Izayoi uneasily. Don't worry, he didn't chase after us, the rescue team has already arrived. Izayoi gave Team 7 a reassurance. Hearing this, Team 7 immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Haruno Sakura even slumped on the ground, terrified. Why is the legendary ninja targeting us? This is too unlucky. TCH, if that guy didn't know Earth style, I would have defeated him. Uzumaki Naruto said stubbornly. Only Uchiha Sasuke had a solemn expression. After all, he knew that the other party was likely here for him. The thought of being targeted by such a big figure made Uchiha Sasuke feel chills down his spine. This time, he was lucky to escape because Izayoi was there, but what about next time? What about the next time? Seeming to see the panic in Uchiha Sasuke's heart, Izayoi patted him on the shoulder and comforted him with a smile. Don't be nervous, after all, it's the village that should be nervous. S-rank missing nin are the most dangerous people in the ninja world, even the great ninja villages dare not underestimate them. Such a big figure suddenly appeared in Konoha, the Hokage will definitely gather the strength of the whole village to find him. During this period, the village's security capabilities will definitely be raised to the extreme. After the exam is over, don't go home, live in the central street first, and go back after the village resolves Orochimaru's matter. Hearing this, Uchiha Sasuke immediately felt a sense of peace and nodded heavily. Yes, I understand. After recovering, Izayoi and Team 7 walked towards the central tower. On the way, Uzumaki Naruto approached Izayoi and asked curiously, Iyo, was that fire dragon tornado you just used taught to you by your Jonin instructor? No, that was a ninjutsu I developed myself. Iyo shook his head. Nani? It's actually a ninjutsu you developed yourself. So amazing. Uzumaki Naruto and Haruno Sakura exclaimed in surprise. Uchiha Sasuke's expression changed slightly as if he remembered something. Is this the ninjutsu you perfected? Isn't it lightning style? Of course not. Iyo showed a meaningful smile and said, Gaia Energy Cannon is just a semi-finished product that I developed by the way when I perfected my ultimate technique. Nani? Team 7 exclaimed again. Haruno Sakura clicked her tongue and said, that fire dragon tornado is not even the complete form. Gulp. Uzumaki Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke swallowed a mouthful of saliva, feeling that there was a huge gap between themselves and Iyo again. Even the semi-finished product has such power, they can't imagine how powerful Io's ultimate technique will be once it's completed. At the same time, Uchiha Sasuke's eyes were full of heat when he looked at Iyo. Ninjutsu that can be called ultimate techniques or S-rank ninjutsu. If he can learn the S-rank ultimate ninjutsu, maybe he can kill that man. But how can he ask Iyo to teach him the ultimate ninjutsu? Even if he doesn't teach him the ultimate technique, the Gaia Energy Cannon just now is also very good. After all, he also has fire release. Thinking of this, Uchiha Sasuke decided to find a way to please Iyo after the exam was over. Locking onto Orochimaru's location with his Tenseigan, and confirming that the other party had really given up on planting the cursed seal on Uchiha Sasuke in the Forest of Death, Iyo separated from Team 7 and went to meet Hinata and Shino Aburame to enter the central tower. Uchiha Sasuke, who was not marked with the cursed seal, his opponents in the Forest of Death were only Yakushi Kabuto, who was hiding his strength, as well as Gaara and Rock Lee, and Neji Hyuga. As for the other examinees, they were not Uchiha Sasuke's opponents. If this continues, Team 7 should be able to reach the central tower soon. The fact was indeed so. Fearing that Orochimaru would come looking for them again, Team 7 didn't rest for even a moment, and went to find the team with the Heaven Scroll. After snatching the other party's Heaven Scroll, they went non-stop to the central tower and reported Orochimaru's targeting them to the shadow clone of Iruka Yumino that appeared from the scroll. Konoha, which officially confirmed that Orochimaru had returned to the village, suddenly had undercurrents surging in an oppressive atmosphere. Many ninjas persuaded Hiruzen Sarutobi to terminate the Chunin exam and fully search for Orochimaru. However, since Konoha had gathered a large number of ninjas from other villages, and invitations had already been sent to the 4th Cage and dignitaries, it was impossible to terminate the Chunin exam. Thus, Hiruzen Sarutobi could only send ninjas and Anbu to search secretly. In this way, 5 days passed, and the second exam officially ended. Chapter 65 Uchiha Sasuke's Rival. Leaf Village, Year 60, July 7, 3 p.m. The examinees who had arrived at the central tower early and were arranged to wait in the dormitory for the end of the exam, received a notice from the proctor and came to the hall on the first floor. Team 8 was one of them. At this time, there were 24 examinees standing in the hall, as well as their Jonin instructors. Just like Anko Mitarashi said, the second exam would eliminate at least half of the examinees who passed the first exam. Out of 24 teams, 72 examinees, only 8 teams, 24 people, ultimately passed the second exam. Among them, the Leaf Village ninjas accounted for the vast majority. To be precise, apart from Gaara and his siblings and the Dosu team from the Hidden Sound Village, the other examinees were all Leaf Village ninjas. They were Team 6, Team 7, Team 8, Team 10, Might Guy's Team 3, and Kabuto Yakushi and his 2 teammates. You did well to arrive at the central tower on the first day. Kurenai Yuhi praised Izayoi and the others as soon as she arrived. Her feminine gentleness was fully displayed. In fact, as a sensory team, Team 8 was already slow for not being the first to arrive at the central tower. So Team 8 didn't have any pride. Izayoi and Hinata just smiled. At this moment, Izayoi seemed to sense something and couldn't help but look in the direction of Team 7, just as he met Kakashi Hataki's gaze. Izayoi smiled and nodded at Kakashi Hataki, knowing why the other party was looking at him. Obviously, Kakashi Hataki learned more about Orochimaru, and had already learned from Team 7 who was responsible for that fire tornado. Before the examinees could chat with their Jonin instructors for a while, Hiruzen Sarutobi and the proctor team for the second exam appeared on the second floor. Then all the Jonin instructors went to the stands on the second floor to listen to the third Hokage's speech. After Hiruzen Sarutobi finished talking about the Chunin exam being a miniature of the Allied Nations War, and that the third exam's official tournament would have a large number of dignitaries and spectators coming to watch, and that a group of excellent genin needed to be selected from the examinees who passed the second exam to ensure the competition was full of spectacle, Hayate Gecko took the stage as the chief proctor. Cough cough. I am Hayate Gecko, the chief proctor of the Chunin selection exam's third exam. Hayate Gecko coughed, then looked at the 24 examinees in front of him, checked the list on the clipboard, and slowly said, "Now is just the preliminary stage. The rules are very simple, that is, the loser is eliminated and the winner advances to the official tournament. In a moment, the screen on the wall will display the names of the 24 of you, and then shuffle them all for a random match. Before the exam starts, does anyone want to abstain? If not, I will upload the list. I abstain." As soon as Hayate Gecko's voice fell, Kabuto Yakushi raised his hand to abstain. This scene, apart from attracting the attention of Hiruzen Sarutobi and some examiners on the stands, the examinees didn't pay too much attention. After all, unlike the original work, the Konoha 11 didn't know Kabuto Yakushi. Cough cough. What's your name? Kabuto Yakushi. Okay, you can leave. Hayate Gecko crossed out Kabuto Yakushi's name and asked again, "Now there are 23 examinees left, there will be one bye, does anyone else want to abstain?" Seeing that no one spoke, Hayate Gecko took out a walkie-talkie and said, "Then I announce that the preliminary round of the Chunin selection exam's third exam officially begins." Immediately, the screen flickered with static. Then the names of the examinees appeared one by one, as if someone was typing on a keyboard behind the scenes. When the names of the 23 examinees were all displayed on the screen, the picture suddenly changed, and two large letters VS replaced the list, occupying the center of the screen. The names flickered non-stop on both sides of the verses. After a few seconds, the picture froze. Dosu Kinuta vs Choji Akamichi. The examinees whose names are displayed stay, the others go to the stands on the second floor to watch the battle, Hayate Gecko said. Choji, good luck. Don't lose to a ninja from a small village. If you win, Asuma-sensei will treat you to barbecue. Yeah. Hearing the word barbecue, Choji Akamichi instantly opened his eyes and nodded seriously. Coming to Kurenai Yuhi's side, Izayoi leaned on the railing, but instead of looking at Choji Akamichi and Dosu Kinuta who had already started fighting below, he was looking at the hidden sound village Jonin next to Zaku Abumi and Kinsuchi. Others couldn't see through the identity of this sound ninja, but Izayoi saw at a glance that the other party was Orochimaru. Izayoi didn't expect that Orochimaru had failed to plant the cursed mark, but still sneaked into the central tower to watch the preliminary round. If that's the case, then why wasn't the first match Sasuke Uchiha vs Yoroi Akato? Could it be that he just came to watch the show, or is there another arrangement? Seeming to notice that Izayoi was looking at him, Orochimaru's gaze was cast over, and he showed Izayoi an evil smile. Izayoi smiled back and nodded politely, as if he didn't know Orochimaru's identity. At this time, the battle below had already been decided. Although Dosu Kinuta didn't expose his intelligence like in the original work, Choji Akamichi still used human bullet tank from the beginning. Choji Akamichi, who retracted his head into his body and blocked his ears, inadvertently avoided the ending of being instantly killed. However, his combat experience was still far inferior to Dosu Kinuta who had fought his way out of a small place. Just like in the original work, Dosu Kinuta continuously dodged the impact of the human bullet tank, and deliberately sold a flaw, allowing Choji Akamichi's body to get stuck in the wall. Then, through the moisture in the human body, he used a sonic wave fist to instantly kill Choji Akamichi. Choji Akamichi is unable to fight. The winner of the first round is Dosu Kinuta. Hayate Gecko immediately announced the result. Seeing this, Shikamaru Nara and Ino Yamanaka helplessly covered their foreheads. Asuma Sarutobi, who was smoking a cigarette, smiled and said, "It's good that he wasn't injured. Choji is still very strong, he just happened to meet a type that restrains him." After speaking, Asuma Sarutobi instantly moved down and brought Choji Akamichi back to the stands, without sending him to the medical room. The screen flickered again, and soon froze. Sasuke Uchiha vs Zaku Abumi. "I look forward to your performance, Zaku," Orochimaru encouraged Zaku Abumi with a smile. Yes. Zaku Abumi was so excited that he almost stood at attention, and quickly guaranteed, "Master, I will definitely not let you down." On Team 7's side, Sakura Haruno reminded Sasuke Uchiha, "Sasuke-kun, those guys from the Hidden Sound Village seem to use sonic ninjutsu, you have to be careful. Naruto Uzumaki also held the back of his head with both hands, and cheered provocatively, "Smug Sasuke, don't lose before you meet me." Sasuke Uchiha, who was about to go down, suddenly stopped, turned his head and smiled at Naruto Uzumaki. "Naruto, I also really want to fight you." This time, Sasuke Uchiha didn't call Naruto Uzumaki a dead last. Naruto Uzumaki's expression froze, his eyes narrowed into a slit slowly opened, and he stared blankly at Sasuke Uchiha. Then a strange emotion surged in his heart, making him tremble with excitement, and goosebumps rose all over his body. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 66 The Brilliance of the Eldest Lady. Uchiha Sasuke, I will definitely defeat you and prove my worth. Uchiha Sasuke had just come down when he heard Zaku Abumi on the opposite side say this to him. Uchiha Sasuke was puzzled, but seeing a guy from a small ninja village being so arrogant, he immediately sneered and said, "Save your daydreams for when you're actually dreaming." HMPH, you'll see. Recalling the information Lord Orochimaru gave him, Zaku Abumi smiled confidently. "Are you ready? Then let's begin." Hayate Gecko took a few steps back and announced the start of the second round. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Uchiha Sasuke immediately took out 3 shurikens from his ninja pouch and threw them at Zaku Abumi, first to test the guy's strength. Zenkaha. Faced with the flying shurikens, Zaku Abumi neither dodged nor took out shurikens to throw in response. Instead, he opened his right hand, revealing the hollow in his palm, formed a boar hand seal, and converted chakra into air pressure through a special device, then spewed it out from the wind tunnel. This air pressure, like a wind ninjutsu, instantly deflected the flying shurikens, and with undiminished power, roared towards Uchiha Sasuke. Looking at the sound wave attack that differed from Dosu Kinyuta's, the disdain in Uchiha Sasuke's eyes disappeared. His black pupils turned into scarlet Sharingan with 2 tomo, and then his body vanished into thin air. Such speed! Many examinees on the stands exclaimed in surprise. Some jonin, however, had a glint in their eyes, seeing a few oddities. However, Zaku Abumi was delighted instead of surprised, shouting, "I've been waiting for you." After speaking, Zaku Abumi squatted down and clapped his hands on the ground, Zenku Kyokua. The chakra in his body was completely converted into sound waves, surging out from the wind tunnel, turning into invisible waves of distorted air, instantly engulfing the entire hall. Being in the midst of the domain, even Hayate Gecko, as a special jonin, felt a burst of discomfort and instinctively shunshin to the second floor stands, while tensing his body, ready to step in and save people. Uchiha Sasuke's figure, however, appeared out of thin air not far behind Zaku Abumi, covering his ears with his hands, a look of pain on his face. Catching Uchiha Sasuke's presence, Zaku Abumi immediately turned around, facing Uchiha Sasuke with both hands, still spewing air pressure, instantly blasting Uchiha Sasuke away. Fortunately, most of the power of this move was used on the floor, otherwise, Uchiha Sasuke would have suffered greatly if he had taken this hit head-on. Even so, Uchiha Sasuke felt a surge within his body, his head dizzy. Just like Dosu Kinyuta's way of instantly killing Choji Akamichi, the sound waves were causing internal damage to him through the water in his body. Looking at Zaku Abumi's triumphant smile, Uchiha Sasuke gathered chakra in his feet, sticking to the wall to resist the final air pressure. After the air pressure disappeared, Uchiha Sasuke formed hand seals, shadow clone jutsu. With 2 poof sounds, 2 shadow clones appeared on either side of Uchiha Sasuke. The next second, 3 Uchiha Sasukes disappeared into thin air. Seeing this, Zaku Abumi's face instantly turned panicked, and then he wanted to repeat the previous tactic, preparing to use Zenku Kyokua on the ground, creating a sound wave domain to trap Uchiha Sasuke. But he forgot that a ninja's battle is a battle of information. Having just gained the advantage of information, he had already completely lost his chance of winning by failing to instantly kill Uchiha Sasuke. Zenku Kyokua. Zaku Abumi repeated his old trick, once again facing the ground with both hands, fully releasing air pressure and sound waves. The invisible waves of distorted air once again engulfed the hall. Uchiha Sasuke's 2 shadow clones, who were moving at high speed and invisible to the naked eye, were instantly exposed, covering their ears with their hands, with painful expressions on their faces. Then, with 2 poof sounds, they turned into white smoke and disappeared. Seeing that there were only 2 Uchiha Sasukes, Zaku Abumi's expression changed drastically. At this moment, a shout rang out from above. Fire release, great fireball technique. A scorching airflow engulfed down. Zaku Abumi looked up, and his eyes were instantly occupied by a huge fireball. Before he could raise his hand to resist, the fireball engulfed him. During this period, no one stepped forward to rescue him, including Orochimaru, who had encouraged him earlier. As for Hayate Gecko, who was ready to step in, that was to protect Uchiha Sasuke. Since the one in danger was not a ninja from his own village, he would certainly not step in. Ah! The fireball exploded a small pit on the ground, burning Zaku Abumi and causing him to scream repeatedly. Just as he was about to be burned to death, a stream of water extinguished the flames. Medical team, please come over here. Hayate Gecko, who used water release to save Zaku Abumi, took out a walkie-talkie and said. Soon, 2 medical ninjas in white uniforms came with a stretcher and carried Zaku Abumi away. From beginning to end, Orochimaru, Dosu Kinyuda, and Kintsuchi showed no emotion, as if they didn't care about the life or death of their companions. This scene made many examinees feel a chill in their hearts. As for the Jonin, they had a certain understanding of the Sound Ninja Village. This is a small ninja village with fierce competition and survival of the fittest. At this time, names flashed on the screen again. Soon, the list for the 3rd round of matches was finalized. Hinata Hyuga vs Kintsuchi. Hinata, good luck. Kurenai Yuhi cheered for Hinata, if you win, I'll treat you to a big meal. Juyuke did not speak, but rolled up his sleeves, revealing a storage scroll the size of a wristband, then formed a hand seal to take out the camera stored inside, and smiled at Hinata. Hinata, show off a bit, I want to take pictures for Hanabi to see. Okay. Hinata nodded with a smile, and then slowly walked towards the stairs. On the way, the Konoha 11 were cheering for Hinata. Uchiha Sasuke, who was going upstairs, also reminded, pay attention to their weapons and devices, they all use those things to create sound waves. Okay. Hinata nodded again, but the smile on her face was full of confidence. Arriving in the hall, Kintsuchi, who jumped down from the stands, had already stood on Hayate Gecko's left-hand side, waiting for a long time. Looking at Hinata on the opposite side, Kintsuchi, like Karen, subconsciously felt inferior. It's just that, unlike Karen's envy, Kintsuchi's eyes were full of jealousy towards Hinata. They both have long, straight black hair, but Hinata's hair is more beautiful than hers, and she's wearing an expensive kimono that she probably won't be able to afford in her lifetime. And her figure, which is the same age as hers, is extremely unfair, and she has the aura of a young lady that makes people feel unattainable just by standing there. Whether it's appearance, inner self, or even background, Kintsuchi has been absolutely crushed, not even on the same level. To be precise, they are not in the same world. Because of this, Kintsuchi's heart was mad with jealousy. Why is she just an orphan, while the other person is a young lady from a wealthy family who was born with a Kekkei Genkei? Why did she have to fight to the death to snatch this qualification to participate in the Chunin exams, while the other person is standing here so easily? I want to cut off her hair, slash her face, and make her feel inferior too. Thinking of this, a sinister smile appeared on Kintsuchi's face. No one knew what Kintsuchi was thinking. However, seeing the opponent showing such an uncomfortable smile, Hinata's eyes gradually changed from gentle to sharp, and the veins on both temples bulged. Chapter 67 My wife is so handsome. 3rd round, begin. As Moonlight Hayate's voice fell, Kintsuchi had just prepared to take out the Senbon with bells attached from her ninja tool pouch, intending to throw them at Hinata and use a sonic genjutsu. However, Hinata, who was 2 meters away from her, seemed to move instantaneously, a blur flashing as she appeared in front of her. The speed was so fast that her body couldn't react at all. Pa pa pa. Hinata's fingers were wrapped in a blue chakra flame as she mercilessly poked Kintsuchi. The astonishing finger strength allowed her fingers to sink into her body through her clothes. The chakra passed through her clothing and flesh, striking into her pressure points, blocking the flow of chakra in her meridians while also bringing Kintsuchi excruciating pain. However, before she could even scream, Hinata, whose attacks were as swift as the wind, had already poked her more than a dozen times. Finally, Hinata struck Kintsuchi with a palm. With a bang, a distorted stream of air gushed out from Kintsuchi's back. When the shockwave dissipated, Kintsuchi's eyes were lifeless, blood flowing from the corner of her mouth, first kneeling down on both knees, and then collapsing to the ground. Thank you for the guidance. Hinata's tone was gentle, but she looked down at Kintsuchi condescendingly, the veins popping on her temples slowly disappearing. Crack. Crack, crack. At the same time, on the second floor stands, the sound of shutters being pressed constantly rang out. 16 Nights, transformed into a photography enthusiast, grinned, his face full of smiles. If he weren't still young and their relationship wasn't public yet, he would have shouted out loud at this moment. My wife is so cool. What just happened? What was that instant transmission Hinata just used? So fast, and without any stiffness. That familiar way of moving, where have I seen it before? Quote. The Konoha 11 were already dumbfounded. Especially Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruno, their current mood was the same as Kintsuchi, feeling that they and Hinata were not on the same level at all. On Might Guy's side, Neji Hyuga clenched his fists, his eyes filled with unwillingness. The young lady has become stronger again. In his mind, he replayed the sparring scenes with Hinata over the years, from the initial evenly matched, to gradually being suppressed by Hinata, and finally to being crushed. That level of finger strength and chakra didn't even require completing a full set of at least 32 palms to beat the enemy into internal injuries, vomiting blood, or even collapsing. Even if Neji Hyuga had mastered rotation, he wasn't confident in defeating Hinata. And next to him, Tenten stared at Rock Lee, whose eyes were trembling, and asked, Lee, the Hyuga clan member, was that high-speed movement she just used? It is high-speed movement, but it's different from mine. Rock Lee nodded and then shook his head. Might Guy explained with a smile, it's nature transformation. That Hyuga clan member, she has mastered lightning release nature transformation, just like Sasuke Uchiha before. She uses lightning release chakra to stimulate cells to increase speed. How youthful. I see. Rock Lee was slightly enlightened, finally understanding why Sasuke Uchiha's speed was so amazing. Clearly, he could barely react at the beginning, but in the next second, he would explode with amazing speed. He thought it was the Sharingan's ability, but it turned out to be lightning release nature transformation. That's right, Hinata has also mastered the technique of using lightning release chakra to stimulate cells. The Hyuga clan is another branch of the Otsutsuki clan left in the ninja world. Although their bloodline has been diluted to a blue entry over the millennia, and their surname has become Hyuga, it doesn't mean that the Hyuga clan cannot use ninjutsu. The reason why the Hyuga clan only uses the Byakugan and Gentle Fist is because the Gentle Fist secret technique is most suitable for their Byakugan, integrating offense and defense, with both ranged and close combat capabilities, and can be cultivated to the level of elite Jonin, so they didn't waste time cultivating ninjutsu. 16 Nights wouldn't be as old-fashioned as the Hyuga clan. He mastered the technique of using lightning release chakra to stimulate cells and taught it to Hinata, who has lightning affinity, as soon as possible, allowing her to transform instant transmission into a taijutsu-based high-speed movement, increasing her attack speed. Obviously, 16 Nights was right. Hinata, who uses lightning release chakra to stimulate cells, has no stiffness in her instant transmission, and her attack speed is as fast as the wind, just like Rock Lee removing his weights. This generation's head family is truly excellent. Hiruzen Sarutobi held his pipe, exhaled a puff of smoke, and chuckled. Immediately, his gaze shifted to 16 Nights, who was checking the film, and his smile suddenly became playful. To cultivate the head family's young lady to this extent is truly remarkable. But with such an excellent successor, how will you be able to be with her? On Team 7's side, Kakashi Hatake asked Sasuke Uchiha, Sasuke, did you teach Hinata that? The newest and most complete novels are at 6_9_shu_ba. No, 16 Nights taught it to me and Hinata. Sasuke Uchiha shook his head. Naruto Uzumaki didn't know if it was envy or what, but he couldn't help but complain, you really are 16 Nights' little brother. This time, Sasuke Uchiha didn't give Naruto Uzumaki a murderous look. Because he was tempted. If he really became 16 Nights' little brother, would he be willing to teach him his ultimate technique? Thinking about 16 Nights' timely rescue and the sense of security he gave, Sasuke Uchiha felt that having such a boss seemed like a good thing. No one knew what the proud second young master was thinking. Hearing Sasuke Uchiha's reply, Kakashi Hatake couldn't help but glance in 16 Nights' direction, and his evaluation of this top student was even higher. To be able to overpower such a special generation of new generation civilian geniuses is indeed not simple. Vast chakra reserves, lightning release chakra stimulation of cells, and powerful fire tornadoes and unknown ultimate techniques. At this moment, Kakashi Hatake seemed to see his younger self. At the age of 12, he not only became a Jonin, but also developed the Chidori. And he also had amazing chakra. Thinking of this, Kakashi Hatake couldn't help but become curious about 16 Knight's strength and looked forward to the upcoming duel even more. Orochimaru had the same idea as Kakashi Hatake. So, after the battle of the Dosu team ended, Orochimaru didn't leave the field, but continued to watch the next duel. The fourth round of the duel began quickly, Masumi Tsurugi vs Kankuro. Masumi Tsurugi is one of Kabuto Yakushi's teammates. Although he is ostensibly a Konoha genin, he is actually one of the spies that Orochimaru planted in Konoha. Moreover, this spy is very strange, as if he is afraid that others won't know his relationship with Orochimaru. Directly using the soft body modification developed by Orochimaru, all parts of his body can be freely extended and contracted. If it can be integrated with the Akamichi clan's expansion technique, 16 Knights would be willing to call it the strongest divine skill surpassing the 8 gates. In the battle, Masumi Tsurugi was like a python, quickly binding Kankuro. As a result, he didn't expect that this Kankuro was not a real person at all, but his puppet crow transformed. When Masumi Tsurugi realized it was already too late. Drilling out from the bandages covering the puppet, Kankuro controlled Crow, quickly resolving Masumi Tsurugi and easily winning. Just like Zaku Abumi ambushing Sasuke Uchiha just now, before his strength has reached the category of Super Cage level, the battle of ninjas is the battle of intelligence. If they don't know each other's intelligence, then what is being compared is not only the power of the technique, but also tactics and intelligence. Obviously, Masumi Tsurugi is far inferior to Kankuro in this regard. Chapter 68 Izayoi's Rival. The 4 rounds of duels almost all ended in instant kills. In less than 10 minutes, the preliminaries reached the 5th round. This round of duels finally became lengthy, so long that many people couldn't help but yawn. Because the battle list for this round was, surprisingly, Yamanaka Ino vs Haruno Sakura. Just like how Naruto Uzumaki mastered wind style, great breakthrough, Sakura Haruno also made significant progress compared to the original story, but that was it. She learned a genjutsu from Kakashi Hatake, the D-rank difficulty hell viewing technique, which could make the opponent see the scene that triggers the most fear in their heart. During the survival exercise, Sakura Haruno was instantly killed by Kakashi Hatake's genjutsu. If her opponent was Minako, Sakura Haruno might have won. Unfortunately, her opponent was Yamanaka Ino, who was skilled in yin-style secret techniques. The hell viewing technique was easily dispelled by Yamanaka Ino. Similarly, although Yamanaka Ino was the heir to a secret ninjutsu clan and had already mastered the mind transfer technique of the Yamanaka clan, the Yamanaka clan's position was support, and the mind transfer technique had no attack power. Although she successfully tricked Sakura Haruno and used the mind transfer technique to seize Sakura Haruno's body, she was kicked out by the second personality in Sakura Haruno's heart. One genjutsu was countered, and one family secret technique was countered. These former best friends were like natural enemies, and could only use the basics taught in the Ninja Academy to determine the winner. 3-body technique, shuriken throwing, kunai close combat, taijutsu duel, both girls had excellent foundations, absolutely top students. But in the eyes of the Jonin, it was like those children playing ninja games, very boring. Even Izayoi and the others felt that these two were too weak. Only Minako resonated with them, realizing that these top students were just like her. In the end, the two girls, just like in the original story, collapsed to the ground exhausted, both missing out on the official competition. By the time they woke up, the battle had already reached the 9th round. The 6th round of the duel was Temari vs Tenten. This was a crushing battle. Tenten, whose attributes were countered by Temari, had no resistance at all in the face of her opponent's wind style. The 7th round of the duel was Nara Shikamaru vs Sawano Genichi. The latter was one of Kiba Inuzuka's teammates, and like Sakura Haruno, came from a ninja family. His father was an ordinary chunin and possessed a surname. Sawano Genichi's strength was also very good, and he had mastered the C-rank water style, Wild Water Wave. Although this move was a basic water style ninjutsu, its usage was flexible and varied. If the chakra was huge, the effect was no less than the B-rank water style, Water Formation Wall. Unfortunately, he had too little combat experience, and his IQ was far inferior to Nara Shikamaru. The moment he used water style, spitting out a stream of water and making Nara Shikamaru disappear from his sight, the result had already appeared. Nara Shikamaru first took out a kunai and held it in his mouth, then used the shadow imitation technique to immobilize Sawano Genichi. After taking the kunai from his mouth, Sawano Genichi took the initiative to admit defeat. As soon as Sawano Genichi was defeated, the 8th round of the duel was Minako vs Neji Hyuga. Seeing that his opponent was a current Konoha noble clan member and the top student of the previous year, Minako didn't even bother to go down and go through the motions, and directly raised her hand to admit defeat. The 9th round of the duel was Naruto Uzumaki vs Kiba Inuzuka. Great, it's Kiba, that idiot, I'm definitely going to win. Seeing the name of his opponent, Naruto Uzumaki immediately raised his foot and stepped on the handrail, shouting excitedly. Kiba Inuzuka, who also had a happy expression, immediately shouted with black lines all over his forehead, "Idiot Naruto, I should be the one saying that." Arriving in the hall, Kiba Inuzuka looked at Naruto Uzumaki with a face full of arrogance and said, "Dead last, if you say something nice to me, I'll let you lose with a little dignity. Or you can just give up." In Kiba Inuzuka's eyes, Naruto Uzumaki was no different from what he was a few months ago. Facing his and Akamaru's combined attack, he would definitely be defeated. However, Naruto Uzumaki also showed an arrogant smile and said, "Watch me defeat you in one move." "Ha ha ha, defeat me in one move. Dead last, are you still not awake yet?" Kiba Inuzuka couldn't help but burst into laughter, and then said to Akamaru, "Akamaru, let's give this dead last a lesson." "Woof," Akamaru barked in response. 9th round, start. As soon as Hayate Gecko's voice fell, Naruto Uzumaki immediately formed the ram hand seal and shouted, "Shadow Clone Technique." A few days passed, and Naruto Uzumaki, who had been hit by the 5 elements seal, no longer had chakra as chaotic as before. Although he still couldn't instantly create hundreds of shadow clones, creating 2-digit shadow clones was still easy. Poof poof poof. Crisp sounds rang out, and clusters of white smoke appeared out of thin air. When the smoke dissipated, more than 20 Naruto Uzumakis had already surrounded Kiba Inuzuka and Akamaru. "This is the shadow clone technique. How are there so many?" Kiba Inuzuka looked shocked. Like him, the genin and even the jonin on the 2nd floor stands were shocked. Especially the well-informed jonin, who immediately recognized that this was not a simple shadow clone technique, but the multiple shadow clone technique listed as a forbidden technique. Wind style. Before Kiba Inuzuka could recover from the shock, Naruto Uzumaki and his shadow clones had already formed hand seals. Seeing his hand seals, the jonin's expressions changed again, and they could already see the next scene. By the time Kiba Inuzuka reacted, Naruto Uzumaki and his shadow clones had already shouted the name of the technique, "Great Breakthrough." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The sound of howling wind rang out, and the materialized airflow was like a visible but untouchable big hand, grabbing Kiba Inuzuka and Akamaru's bodies and throwing them into the air. Then, hands appeared out of thin air, throwing the man and beast around in the air, as if they had entered a tornado. Even the examinees and jonin on the 2nd floor stands were affected. The former tightly grasped the handrails or hugged the railings, unable to open their eyes completely, while many of the latter also reached out to block their eyes. When the 6th squad's jonin leader saw Kiba Inuzuka and Akamaru spinning rapidly in the air, about to crash hard into the wall, he quickly teleported over to catch them, ending the duel. 9th round, the winner is Naruto Uzumaki. Hayate Gecko, who was firmly sticking his feet to the ground and also blocking his eyes with both hands, immediately announced the result. "Ha ha ha, idiot Kiba, you've seen how powerful I am." Naruto Uzumaki put his hands on his hips and laughed arrogantly. Successfully defeating his former crushing opponent, Naruto Uzumaki's mood was so cheerful now. His heart swelled again, and he couldn't help but imagine the scene of punching Izayoi, kicking Sasuke Uchiha, and the bushy brows kneeling on the ground to admit defeat. The face laughing with his head held high, his expression gradually became wretched, and even saliva dripped from the corners of his mouth. It wasn't until Hayate Gecko reminded him that he came back to his senses and returned to the 2nd floor stands with a swaggering gait. The screen flashed with names again. When the screen froze, many people perked up. On the screen, it clearly showed, Izayoi vs Rock Lee. Chapter 69 Izayoi vs Rock Lee. Excellent. Seeing that his opponent was Izayoi, Rock Lee couldn't help but clench his fist and shout, his expression excited. He had wanted to challenge Izayoi before, but he was stopped by Sasuke Uchiha. Having witnessed Sasuke Uchiha's strength and his attitude towards Izayoi, Rock Lee became even more determined to challenge Izayoi. Now, he had finally gotten his wish. "Lee, go and bloom your youth." Might Guy patted Rock Lee's shoulder and grinned. "Yes, Guy-sensei." Rock Lee stood at attention and responded, then also grinned, emitting a white light. Feeling the strange gazes from around, Tenten couldn't help but cover her face, feeling too embarrassed. Neji Hyuga, on the other hand, was expressionless and said faintly, "Lee, your opponent is not simple. His chakra is very astonishing, and he is also Hinata-sama's companion. Be careful." "I know." Rock Lee nodded with a serious expression, then stepped on the railing, leapt down, and landed with a somersault. Seeing that he was matched with Rock Lee, Izayoi was also slightly surprised. Since the next few rounds of the duel were the same as in the original work, Izayoi thought that Rock Lee would still face Gaara, and he might be matched with Yoroi Ikato and Shino Aburame, or become the lucky one to get a bye. But he didn't expect that he would actually face Rock Lee. Thinking of the 8 Gates formation, this divine skill, Izayoi was also interested. Just as Izayoi was about to leap down, Hinata's voice suddenly came from his ear. "Izayoi-kun, give me the camera." "Okay." Taking the camera from Izayoi, Hinata clenched her small fist and said, "Ganbat. Watch my performance." Izayoi smiled confidently, and then, as if thinking of something, suddenly retracted his foot on the railing, leaned close to Hinata's ear, and whispered, "If I win, remember to give me a reward when we get back." After saying that, Izayoi disappeared in a flash, appearing in the hall. Looking at Kurenai Yuhi's playful smile, Hinata's small face flushed red, and then she raised the camera, blocking her face, while looking for the best position for light and shadow. "Izayoi, please give me your guidance." In the hall, Rock Lee struck a fighting pose towards Izayoi, his expression serious, his eyes full of fighting spirit. "Before we start fighting, take off your weights first." Izayoi reminded, "Although this is just a battle between ninja from the same village, I won't show mercy to my enemies during battle. If you continue to be arrogant, then don't look unwilling when you get killed in seconds later." Amazing, he actually saw through it at a glance. Rock Lee looked at Izayoi with a surprised expression, his fighting spirit even stronger. But thinking of his agreement with Guy-sensei, his expression was still hesitant. "Lee, take them off." At this time, Might Guy's voice came into his ears. He saw Might Guy giving Rock Lee a thumbs up, and smiled, "This is an opponent worth going all out for, I allow you to take them off." "Yes, Guy-sensei." Rock Lee instantly teared up, then sat down excitedly and began to remove the weights on his legs. "Nani? That bushy brow actually wears weights." On the 7th team side, Naruto Uzumaki and Sakura Haruno were already dumbfounded. Sasuke Uchiha sneered, "Just a few pieces of iron." But the next second, his pupils suddenly shrank. Boom! 2 loud noises overlapping each other exploded. In a corner of the hall, a thick cloud of dust rose. When the dust dissipated, the ground where the 2 pieces of iron were located was actually sunken, and a large number of cracks appeared around it. Seeing this scene, all the examinees were dumbfounded. "This guy." Sasuke Uchiha grabbed the railing forcefully, his heart greatly impacted. Wearing such heavy things, this guy's speed can actually be so fast that he needs to use lightning chakra to stimulate his cells. What level does his true speed reach? Even many Jonin showed surprised expressions. That guy is too reckless. Kakashi Hatake and Asuma Sarutobi and the others twitched their eyes and corners of their mouths slightly, speechless for a while. Kurenai Yuhi, who didn't know Izayoi's true strength, said with a solemn expression, "Izayoi has met his match this time." Shino Aburame took his hands out of his pockets, grabbed the railing, and his eyes under the sunglasses stared at Izayoi, whose expression remained unchanged, full of anticipation. Finally, he can see the true strength of this top student who has been a classmate for 6 years. This kid, could it be that he also mastered that special skill? Looking at Rock Lee, who had removed his weights and was jumping in place, Orochimaru, who had not left, was also full of interest in this battle. "It's been a long time since I've felt so relaxed." Rock Lee, who had finished warming up, once again made a fighting pose towards Izayoi, saying, "Izayoi, this is my strongest state, let's have a showdown." Izayoi smiled and raised his index and middle fingers. "Come on, please give me your guidance. Please give me your guidance." Rock Lee's starting pose also turned into the opposition seal. Seeing this scene, Hiruzen Sarutobi on the platform couldn't help but smile with satisfaction. As if sensing the aura of the two, Hayate Gecko's expression also became serious. He held the clipboard in one hand and raised the other high, shouting loudly, "10th round, Izayoi vs Rock Lee, officially start." The arm fell heavily. Hayate Gecko teleported to the second floor of the stands, leaving the entire hall to Izayoi and Rock Lee, for fear of hindering their performance. Hayate Gecko's speed was very fast, but Rock Lee's speed was even faster. Before Hayate Gecko had appeared on the second floor of the stands, Rock Lee's figure disappeared and appeared out of thin air on Izayoi's left side, attacking with a low kick. Leaf Whirlwind. So fast that all the examinees, including Gaara, and even some special Jonin, did not react. But Izayoi was the real fast man. Almost at the moment Rock Lee appeared on the left, Izayoi turned his head and blew lightly at the kicking foot. Whoosh whoosh. The gale roared, and the twisted airflow not only blocked Rock Lee's kick, but also blew his body away. It was the wind release, great breakthrough that Naruto Uzumaki had used before. Single-handed seal. What a fast casting speed. Some knowledgeable Jonin's expressions changed slightly. In the eyes of the examinees and Jonin, Izayoi stood still, his hands hidden in his wide sleeves, and then predicted Rock Lee's position in advance, turned his head and spit out a stream of air, which grew into an invisible big hand, grabbed Rock Lee and threw him towards the wall. At this time, Hayate Gecko had just appeared on the second floor of the stands. From the proctor leaving the field to Rock Lee attacking, and then to Rock Lee being blown away, the whole process did not take 3 seconds. It was these less than 3 seconds that made most of the examinees see the gap between themselves and Rock Lee and Izayoi. Sasuke Uchiha came back to his senses and activated the Sharingan for the first time. Even Kakashi Hatake pulled up his forehead protector, revealing the 3-tomo Sharingan in his left eye, staring at Izayoi and Rock Lee below. He had a premonition that these two young men would present a wonderful battle to everyone. Chapter 70. Ninjutsu Genius vs Taijutsu Genius, Chidori style in 8 gates. Indeed, he's strong. Blown away by the fierce wind, Rock Lee's feet stuck to the wall as he looked at the nonchalant Izayoi with immense excitement. When the air current weakened, he disappeared again, but did not appear around Izayoi. Instead, he turned into a black afterimage, revolving around Izayoi. The speed was so fast that the small afterimage stirred up a cloud of dust, forming a white whirlwind that surrounded Izayoi. The next second, Rock Lee appeared in front of Izayoi and threw a punch. Izayoi didn't make any movements. When the fist was about to hit Izayoi, it suddenly stopped. Upon closer inspection, the fist and Rock Lee were just afterimages. Leaf Great Whirlwind. A shout rang out, and a whirlwind appeared out of nowhere on Izayoi's right side, transforming into Rock Lee's figure. A 360-degree spinning kick, charged with power, struck towards Izayoi. If it were the other members of this year's Rookie 9, except for Shino Aburame, who can use insect clones, the others would probably have the battle end after taking this kick. But still, the same sentence applies. Rock Lee's speed is fast, but Izayoi's speed is even faster. Just like the leaf whirlwind just now, the spinning kick was blocked before it even reached Izayoi. This time it wasn't wind release, but Izayoi's forearm. With a bang, a burst of air erupted from the intersection of Izayoi's forearm and Rock Lee's calf. Blocking a kick that could send countless pounds of objects flying head-on, Izayoi's forearm remained motionless, as if made of steel. Because the sleeve was blocking it, no one could see the reason. Under Rock Lee's wide-eyed gaze, Izayoi switched from blocking to seizing, reaching out to grab his ankle, then turning and using the momentum to throw Rock Lee heavily to the ground. Relying on his amazing arm strength, Rock Lee supported himself with his hands to block this blow, and at the same time used force to break free, doing a front flip to land. Izayoi didn't pursue the victory, but instead retracted his hand and continued to watch Rock Lee silently. From beginning to end, Izayoi hadn't moved half a step. The Rookie 9 were already dumbfounded. He even knows Earth Release Nature Transformation. Kakashi Hatake's 3-tomo in his eyes spun rapidly, being one of the few on the field who could see through Izayoi's means of blocking. In the eyes of others, Izayoi's taijutsu is amazing, even Rock Lee, who is wearing those weights, is completely suppressed. But in Kakashi Hatake's eyes, Izayoi is an out-and-out ninjutsu genius. The lightning release nature transformation taught to Sasuke Uchiha and Hinata Hyuga, as well as the fire dragon whirlwind in the Forest of Death, and the wind release just now and the earth release nature transformation now, Izayoi has already mastered 4 nature transformations. Could this kid be all attributes? Kakashi Hatake thought to himself. Even with all attributes, it still requires arduous training to master this level of nature transformation. No wonder the Hyuga clan didn't stop the main family's young lady from associating with him, it seems they had already discovered and invested in this unpolished gem. Truly excellent. Such chakra, and such ninjutsu talent, it seems he's a genius with an awakened bloodline from a previous generation, so, is it Senju, or Uzumaki? Orochimaru revealed a wicked smile on his face, his thoughts the same as Kakashi Hatake, suspecting that Izayoi was all attributes and even speculating about Izayoi's ancestral origins. Bang bang bang. The sounds of fighting continued to ring out, and Rock Lee, who was continuously suppressed, was not discouraged at all, but instead excitedly attacked Izayoi, getting stronger as he fought. Izayoi also stopped using ninjutsu to block, but instead released the Kagura Mind's Eye for sensing, while using lightning release chakra to stimulate cells and increase speed, engaging in a fierce taijutsu battle with Rock Lee. In the hall, the two afterimages were like rapidly spinning tops, colliding with each other. Each time they collided, they would reveal their figures, then change positions and continue to collide. When fists and feet collided, whether it was pure strength or the invisible airwaves generated by chakra, it would gush out from the point where fists and feet intersected. Gradually, the speed of the two became faster and faster, and their positions were no longer limited to the ground, sometimes even leaping into the air, making it dazzling to watch. Sasuke Uchiha's eyes could barely keep up, but Naruto Uzumaki and the others were really dumbfounded. Not to mention them, even some special Jonin who were not good at sensing were also shocked. They never expected that there would be two such monsters among this year's Genin. The all-rounder Jonin, and the elite Jonin with ace combat power, looked at Izayoi, who was clearly not a taijutsu expert, but whose speed was not weaker than Rock Lee's, and sighed slightly. What amazing nature transformation, what strong chakra control. Both using lightning release chakra to increase speed, Sasuke Uchiha and Hinata Hyuga could not compare with Izayoi. This incomparable refers not to speed. But after the speed skyrocketed, they either couldn't perfectly control their bodies, or they needed to slowly adapt before they could increase their speed, and their endurance was average. On the other hand, Izayoi, when he uses lightning release chakra to stimulate cells and increase speed, he can immediately perfectly master this state, and can instantly increase his speed to the extreme. This not only requires powerful nature transformation, but also amazing chakra control ability. And the latter is the key. To have this level of chakra control at this age, no wonder he has mastered 2-4 nature transformations at such a young age. Everyone present seemed to see a vision of Konoha gaining another all-around Jonin in a few years. But quickly, the Jonin present realized they had underestimated Izayoi. After countless exchanges, Izayoi and Rock Lee, colliding like spinning tops in a flurry of afterimages, finally came to a halt. Rock Lee, breathing heavily, beads of sweat on his forehead, stared at Izayoi across from him. Izayoi remained as calm and serene as ever, smiling. Your taijutsu is impressive, but if that's all you have, this battle will end quickly. Do you have any stronger techniques? Hearing this, Rock Lee instinctively glanced in Might Guy's direction. Seeing Guy-sensei's signature toothy grin and a thumbs up, Rock Lee's face lit up with joy. Then, unwinding the bandages on his hands, he said to Izayoi, I have even more powerful techniques, but they are forbidden techniques that are not to be used on comrades. The reason I was punished by Guy-sensei after my fight with Sasuke was because I almost broke that taboo. But if my opponent is you, Izayoi, I believe you can withstand the power of the lotus. With the bandages falling to the ground, Rock Lee looked at Izayoi with unwavering determination, and said in a deep voice, Izayoi, I will use this move to prove to you that hard work can defeat genius. Hearing this, the examinees immediately became attentive. Even the Jonin watched Rock Lee with serious expressions. Kakashi Hatake, who knew Might Guy best, had a bold idea. That guy, he wouldn't have taught him that forbidden technique, would he? The next second, Kakashi Hatake's thought was confirmed. From the perspective of the Byakugan and Sharingan, Rock Lee's brain suddenly experienced a surge of chakra, which then flowed through his meridians, as if breaking some kind of restriction. Even his aura changed. Many Jonin felt a sense of pressure from Rock Lee, a feeling that he could potentially overcome those above him. Izayoi also noticed this and finally became completely serious. Without using the power of the Tenseigan, Izayoi was curious to see just how powerful the Eight Gates formation, one of the 3 great techniques of Shippuden, truly was. Then, Izayoi saw Rock Lee in his eyes, his figure flashed, instantly appearing in front of him from a few meters away, and throwing a straight punch. Izayoi reacted quickly, wanting to raise his hand to strike his wrist. But the next moment, Rock Lee repeated his trick, his figure disappearing again, and this time without even leaving an afterimage, appearing behind Izayoi, his fist turning into a claw, trying to grab and bind Izayoi with his bandages. Buzz buzz buzz. At this moment, the sound of electric current intersecting rang out. Snake-like blue and white electric arcs appeared out of thin air, swirling around Izayoi's body. Rock Lee's palm hadn't even touched Izayoi before he was shocked and retracted his hand, quickly distancing himself from Izayoi. This is the lightning release chakra mode of Kumogakur. No, this is just shape transformation. What an amazing guy. Not only nature transformation, but even shape transformation is so powerful. Such a lightning release talent is just like Jonin Kakashi. Quote. Sounds of amazement rang out from the second floor stands. The people speaking were all Jonin. These words were so harsh to Kurenai Yuhi's ears. At the same time, she couldn't help but show a wry smile, feeling that the Hokage had assigned the wrong team. With Izayoi's talent, he should have been Kakashi Hataki's disciple. If Izayoi was Kakashi Hataki's disciple, he might have already learned a large number of 5 elements ninjutsu, or even mastered Chidori, or even the S-class ultimate technique Reikiri, which is a fusion of nature transformation and shape transformation. As for the examinees, most of them didn't even understand nature transformation, let alone shape transformation. Only Sasuke Uchiha's eyes lit up, so lightning release chakra can be used like this. Little did he know, this was the move he would develop in the future. Chidori Stream. Bang! Using Chidori Stream, Izayoi's speed was also increased, his figure flashed and came to Rock Lee's front, throwing a punch. Rock Lee subconsciously blocked with both hands, the next second his eyeballs bulged, his face showing pain. He was kicked in the stomach by Izayoi, sent flying out, and crashed heavily into the wall, smashing out a small dent, cracks spreading. Izayoi didn't press the attack, but with blue and white electric arcs swirling around his body, he smiled. Just increasing your speed by 20% doesn't qualify as a forbidden technique, you should be able to become stronger. Let me see your true trump card. Like a hanging picture falling, Rock Lee, who came down from the wall, lowered his head and didn't speak. But the Dujutsu users on the stands, and the ninjas who were good at sensing, seemed to see something, and their pupils shrank, their expressions changing in shock. 8 Gates Formation, 3rd Gate of Life. Open. Rock Lee crossed his hands, and the surrounding airflow suddenly became distorted and rising. When he raised his head, his eyes were already occupied by the whites of his eyes, and no pupils could be seen. His face flushed red, blue veins popped up on his forehead, and his whole body emitted white steam. Accompanied by a loud shout, green energy burst out. Chapter 71, Remarks on the Release. 10 Updates. Chapter 72, Storm Release, Judgment, Ultimate Technique vs Ultimate Technique. What's with that bushy eyebrows? Such powerful chakra, what kind of technique is that? Quote. Looking at Rock Lee, who was covered in green energy, surrounded by blue chakra flames, with the air twisting and rising, and his hair standing on end, all the examinees showed expressions of shock. Neji Hyuga and Sasuke Uchiha, who had activated their Byakugan and Sharingan, felt a tremor in their eyes and a violent shock in their hearts. They hadn't expected Rock Lee to be so strong. The Jonin's eyes were also filled with horror, sensing a fatal threat from Rock Lee. The 8 Gates released formation, I didn't expect this kid to actually master this forbidden technique. Orochimaru, disguised as a sound ninja, also began to take Rock Lee seriously, marveling in his heart, this generation of Konoha is truly producing geniuses. Just like the Flying Thunder God technique, the 8 Gates released formation is also a well-known forbidden technique in the ninja world. Others who want to become all-rounder Jonin must master at least 2 nature transformations, otherwise they are just special Jonin. Only Might Guy, who only knows taijutsu, has become one of Konoha's trump cards, a taijutsu master known throughout the ninja world. Relying on, is the 8 Gates released formation this forbidden technique. To learn the 8 Gates released formation, one must have a body honed through countless trials, capable of withstanding the violent chakra. Orochimaru had never seen anyone who could open 3 gates at the age of 12 or 13. But soon, Orochimaru realized that he had underestimated this young man. Rock Lee, radiating violent aura, clenched his fist and bent over again, gritting his teeth and shouting, 8 Gates released formation, 4th gate, Gate of Pain, open. Along with a loud shout, the blast of air swept through the entire hall. The green energy on Rock Lee's body grew even stronger. He can even enter the danger zone. Orochimaru and Kakashi Hatake both flashed their eyes. The 4th gate is the true meaning of the 8 Gates released formation. Even Hiruzen Sarutobi put down his pipe, staring at the serious-looking Izayoi, wanting to see if Izayoi was afraid now. Once Izayoi was not confident in facing Rock Lee, he would order someone to stop the duel. The 8 Gates released formation, this amplification-type forbidden technique, is indeed very unfair to others. At this time, Rock Lee had adapted to the state of the fourth gate, and assumed a starting posture. Seeing this, everyone concentrated their attention. Even Izayoi locked onto Rock Lee with his Kagura Shingen. Crack! Boom! First, there was the crisp sound of the floor cracking, and then a deafening explosion suddenly rang out. Rock Lee's figure disappeared. Different from unloading the weights before, a high-speed movement so fast that there was only a trail of afterimages, Rock Lee this time just rushed forward, shattering the floor, creating a huge cloud of dust, and engulfing Izayoi with a wind-like blast of air. Such power and speed are simply non-human levels. So fast. Izayoi marveled slightly in his heart, the divine technique is indeed well-deserved. Although Kagura Shingen can capture the movement trajectory, it is impossible for Izayoi to stimulate cells with lightning release chakra to increase his speed to the same level as Rock Lee. If Rock Lee opening the first gate can only exert 100% of his physical abilities, then he is now opening the fourth gate, which is 200%, or even higher. His power and speed values have already surpassed Izayoi. So, Izayoi raised his hand and slapped it out, and a gale roared out. The dust immediately dispersed, but there was no one in front. Rock Lee's figure appeared behind Izayoi again. ZZ. The sound of electric current interlacing rang out again. Looking at Izayoi, who was surrounded by electric arcs, Rock Lee's body leaned forward slightly, and then a sonic boom cloud appeared between him and Izayoi. Boom! The shock wave generated by hitting the air swept through Izayoi through the electric arc, but there was no scene of being blown away. Izayoi's body turned into a cloud of white smoke, and a piece of wood fell to the ground. Substitution technique. Rock Lee looked up and saw Izayoi's main body wrapped in a ball of fierce wind, suspended on the ceiling. He won. Seeing this scene, Might Guy, who had been making praying gestures with his hands, cheered immediately. He is not afraid of anything, but afraid that Izayoi will use high-speed movement to fight a protracted war with Rock Lee. The side effects of the 8 gates released formation are still too great for Rock Lee, who is still in his growth stage, and he cannot fight for a long time at all. If he cannot win quickly, Rock Lee's body will not be able to withstand it, and he will lose his combat ability. Now Izayoi took the initiative to jump into the air, and temporarily floated in the air with wind release, which is simply giving Rock Lee a target. Sure enough, after Rock Lee confirmed that the Izayoi in the sky was the main body, he immediately bent his knees and clenched his fists, and gritted his teeth again. 8 gates released formation, 5th gate. Gate of closing, open. Boom! The violent air waves roared out again. This time, the air wave not only swept through the entire hall and the second floor, but also shattered the ground, creating dust and depriving the ninjas who were not good at perception of the right to watch the battle. In this level of battle, the weak do not even have the qualifications to watch. Kakashi Hatake and other Konoha Jonin also tensed up, looking at Izayoi, who was suspended under the ceiling, ready to step in and save him. But in the next second, the big figures, including Hiruzen Sarutobi, all changed their expressions. Izayoi stretched out his hand and faced downwards, and a blue vortex appeared under his palm. Immediately, more and more vortexes appeared, quickly merging to form a blue and white energy ball. This energy ball is not only not unfamiliar to some Jonin, but also extremely familiar. This is Rasengan. How is that possible? Why does this young man know the 4th Hokage's Rasengan? No, this is not Rasengan. The Jonin had just exclaimed when they noticed something was wrong. Because they all saw that the energy ball in Izayoi's hand was still growing in size, becoming a little bigger than an adult's head. Then, 2 fist-sized energy balls appeared inside this energy ball. At the beginning, the colors of these 2 small energy balls were the same as the big energy ball, both blue and white. But soon, these 2 small energy balls turned into one white and one blue. White is the white of lightning, and blue is the blue of the sea. Seeing these 2 nature transformations, Hiruzen Sarutobi, Orochimaru, and Kakashi Hatake all changed their expressions slightly. Rasengan is already an A-level non-attribute ninjutsu, and it is still a top-level form transformation. If you can add nature transformation to it, it is equivalent to Chidori adding form transformation, turning into lightning blade that cuts off lightning. And lightning blade is an S-level lightning release ultimate technique. Now Izayoi's energy ball not only adds nature transformation, but also adds 2 kinds. Then what is the power level of this ninjutsu? Perhaps, they should be worried about not Izayoi, but Rock Lee. Boom. At this time, the sound of a sonic boom rang out, and the air wave dispersed the dust. A figure covered in green light, carrying a twisted rising airflow, shot towards Izayoi on the ceiling. Along the way, this figure kept flickering, actually stepping on the air and moving at high speed in the air. Izayoi slowly closed his eyes, and Kagura Shingen locked onto Rock Lee's position. The two energy balls inside the Super Hurricane serial spheres in his hand were spinning frantically like the Tomo inside the Sharingan. Originally, it was clockwise, but after a few circles, one of them was spinning counterclockwise, colliding with the other energy ball. The collision of the two nature transformations did not cause the Super Hurricane serial spheres to explode, but merged together, turning into a dazzling laser, filling the Super Hurricane serial spheres. Judgment. As Izayoi's shout rang out, the energy ball in his hand immediately turned into a laser beam, and shot down with expansive force. Reverse Lotus. Looking at the constantly expanding laser beam, Rock Lee, whose speed was so fast that it brought up a sonic boom cloud, could only slam the charged strike prepared for Izayoi into the laser beam because the hull was too small to dodge. The fist covered with green light generated a terrifying shock wave by hitting the air, colliding with the laser beam from bottom to top. The scene of Ultimate Technique vs Ultimate Technique immediately appeared in front of all the examinees and Jonin. Whether it is Taijutsu Ultimate Technique or Storm Release Ultimate Technique that combines water and electricity, these are not powers that genin can possess. Even special Jonin and some Jonin do not have moves to contend with them. Before these viewers could guess which ultimate technique was stronger, the shock wave blasted out by Rock Lee quickly disappeared in the struggle, and then was blasted away by the laser beam, engulfing Rock Lee. Seeing this scene, Might Guy immediately exclaimed, "Lightning Blade!" Just as the laser beam was about to hit the ground, opening a hole of unknown depth in the hull, a figure suddenly appeared out of thin air, holding a ball of lightning in his hand, and pressed it on the laser beam. It was Kakashi Hatake. The power to cut off lightning successfully cut off the section of the laser beam that engulfed Rock Lee. An afterimage flashed, and Hayate Gecko caught Rock Lee, who was already unconscious and even dying, and Shunshin disappeared. Boom! The remaining laser beam crashed to the ground. The entire central tower was shaking violently. The examinees who did not grab the handrail and did not have time to absorb the ground with chakra were all shaken to the ground. The embarrassed ones who fell to the ground did not care about their image, but grabbed the railing with both hands, staring wide-eyed at the light beam that was gradually shrinking, and finally turned into a line and disappeared. When the light beam completely disappeared, there were not many places to stand in the entire hall. There is only a bottomless black hole. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 73 Reward, Hinata takes the initiative. Lee, are you alright? Lee, wake up quickly. The atmosphere in the hall was extremely quiet. Only Might Guy's panicked voice could be heard. It's no wonder he reacted this way. At this moment, Rock Lee looked like a charred fish, his clothes and skin were completely black. Due to the side effects of the 8 Gates released formation, and the remaining power of the Storm Release secret art, his body was still emitting wisps of steam. He had also lost consciousness long ago. If he didn't still have breath and a heartbeat, no one would doubt that this was a well-cooked corpse. At the same time, there were also 2 beams of blue light that no one could see, flying out of Rock Lee's body and towards Izayoi. Although he lost to Izayoi, Rock Lee still proved himself to Izayoi through the 8 Gates released formation. Cough cough. Don't worry, he's just unconscious. Hayate Gecko comforted, then took out the walkie-talkie and said, "Medical team, come here quickly, there's a patient here who needs emergency treatment." Before long, 3 medical ninja in white coats appeared instantly with a stretcher, giving Rock Lee first aid while carrying him away from the exam venue. Might Guy, whose other 2 disciples had finished their matches, chose to follow. No one paid attention to this, because everyone's gaze was still fixed on the black hole that replaced the hall. Then their gazes shifted to Izayoi, who was falling down. Whether it was genin or jonin, the way they looked at Izayoi had completely changed from before. If Izayoi's previous use of lightning release nature transformation and shape transformation made the jonin feel that he was an all-round jonin of the future, then now, everyone regarded him as Konoha's future trump card combat power. Secret arts, also known as S-rank ninjutsu, or super ninjutsu that one cannot necessarily learn no matter how much effort one puts in. Every ninja who masters an S-rank ninjutsu is an elite jonin of a major ninja village, possessing the trump card combat power to threaten the cage, become the cage, and represent the cage. Without a doubt, Izayoi already possessed such strength. Once his wisdom, benevolence, courage, leadership skills, and battle achievements are improved, becoming an elite jonin is inevitable. Izayoi, is this the ninjutsu you developed? As soon as Izayoi landed, Kurenai Yuhi asked excitedly. Shino Aburame and Hinata Hyuga beside her were also staring straight at Izayoi, the latter's eyes undisguised with admiration for Izayoi. Yes. Izayoi nodded and smiled. I said I would shock you, didn't I? I didn't disappoint you, did I? Yes, too strong. Kurenai Yuhi patted Izayoi's shoulder forcefully. You kid, you're really hiding your strength. She originally thought that Izayoi would be the Kakashi Hatake of this era, but she didn't expect that Izayoi would actually be even more outstanding than Kakashi Hatake. Although Kakashi Hatake had already become an all-round jonin at the age of 12, and had even developed his own A-rank lightning release, Chidori. But his Chidori, compared to Izayoi's storm release, Judgment, the difference was simply not small. Having such a student, Kurenai Yuhi suddenly felt that their bet was so ridiculous. From the beginning, she had won, and she had won big. This brat actually perfected the Rasengan to this extent, truly amazing and brilliant. Orochimaru looked at Izayoi with admiration in his eyes, almost unable to resist sticking out his long tongue to lick his lips. Izayoi didn't let him wait in vain, and indeed presented him with a wonderful duel. Although he didn't have a bloodline limit, that talent made Orochimaru see the former self, and the shadows of many commoner geniuses. Satisfied, Orochimaru quietly left. At this time, the special Jonin guarding near Hiruzen Sarutobi also used Earth Release Ninjutsu to repair the black hole in the hall. The time required and the chakra consumed were both very astonishing. The ninja who witnessed it personally once again experienced the power of that storm release secret art. Being able to fuse lightning release nature transformation and water release nature transformation into storm release, could this kid have combined a bloodline limit? Kurenai Yuhi seemed to have thought of this as well, and couldn't help but ask, Izayoi, did you synthesize storm release bloodline limit? No, I just used that energy ball as a carrier, using ultra high-speed rotation, barely fusing the two nature transformations together. It belongs to a higher level composite secret art, and I can't directly convert chakra into storm release nature transformation yet, Izayoi shook his head and said. In fact, when he synthesized storm release, Izayoi was also taken aback. But after carefully sensing his body, Izayoi found that he didn't have the storm release bloodline limit, and the personal panel didn't show the entry for bloodline limit storm release purple. Being able to synthesize storm release was all thanks to chakra control gold. Or maybe it was thanks to the Tenseigan. However, the fusion of two releases was not Izayoi's limit. Storm release judgment was just one of his secret arts. After the hall was repaired, the exam continued. The battle between Izayoi and Rock Lee was the 10th round. Of the 23 examinees, only Gaara, Yoroi Ikato, and Shino Aburame remained. Among these three, a lucky one would appear. The name on the screen quickly settled. Gaara vs Yoroi Ikato. Quote. Izayoi was slightly speechless, secretly giving Shino Aburame a strange look. The sensitive Shino Aburame instantly noticed it. Is something wrong? No, it's nothing, Izayoi shook his head. He couldn't possibly say that the reason you got a bye was because your presence was so low that the proctors backstage ignored you. If these words were spoken, Shino Aburame would definitely be sad for a long time. The 11th round of the duel ended with Gaara's instant kill of Yoroi Ikato without any suspense. If Yoroi Ikato wasn't wearing Konoha's forehead protector, Hayate Gecko would have intervened in time to stop the match, otherwise the former might have been crushed by Gaara using Sand Coffin. Sasuke Uchiha hadn't been implanted with the curse mark of heaven, and could still use the Sharingan. Yoroi Ikato's ability to absorb chakra wasn't as effective as Zaku Abumi's decapitating airwaves. Having failed to become the lucky one with a bye, Yoroi Ikato's fate of defeat was already sealed. In this way, the preliminaries ended, and 11 examinees advanced to the main round. These 11 examinees were Dosu Kinuta, Sasuke Uchiha, Hinata Hyuga, Kankuro, Temari, Shikamaru Nara, Naruto Uzumaki, Neji Hyuga, Izayoi, Gaara, and Shino Aburame. As mentioned before, the Chunin exams are a microcosm of the Allied Nations War. The main round of the third exam will have a large number of dignitaries and spectators present. These people may become your clients in the future, so in order to present them with the best visual feast, you have 1 month to prepare. During this time, improve yourselves well, and then gather at Konoha's Plaza at 10 o'clock in the morning. In the hall, Hiruzen Sarutobi finished his instructions, then ordered Anko Mitarashi, who was holding a box, to come out and have the 11 examinees draw lots to determine their opponents 1 month later. 11 examinees, 5 rounds of duels, there was still one lucky one with a bye. Soon, the 11 examinees finished drawing lots. Enko Mitarashi wrote the numbers they drew, as well as the names of the examinees, on a board. Question mark. No. 1. Naruto Uzumaki vs. No. 2. Dosu Kinyuta. Question mark. No. 3. Hinata Hyuga vs. No. 4. Tamari. Question mark. No. 5. Shikamaru Nara vs. No. 6. Konkuro. Question mark. No. 7. Izayoi vs. No. 8. Gaara. Question mark. No. 9. Sasuke Uchiha vs. No. 10. Neji Hyuga. The lucky one with a bye, Shino Aburame. When the list came out, many strange gazes were cast at Shino Aburame. Shino Aburame finally got his wish and experienced the feeling of being the center of attention. The corner of his mouth under his collar couldn't help but curl up slightly. After the drawing of lots ended, the examinees left the forest of death together with their supervising Jonin. Just as they came out, Kurenai put her arm around Hinata's fragrant shoulder and smiled at Team 8, saying, "Let's go, to celebrate your entire team's promotion. Your teacher will treat you to a big meal." "Thank you, Kurenai-sensei." Having stayed in the central tower for 5 days, where the food was very ordinary, Team 8 didn't refuse. It was dusk, just the time for dinner. After dinner, night had already fallen. Hinata didn't go home immediately but went to Izayoi's house to develop photos with him in his room. "Hinata, that last palm strike of yours was so cool." "Hehe, Izayoi-kun's last move, Storm Release, Judgment, was super cool too. I didn't expect Izayoi's ultimate technique to be Storm Release. Then do you think I should work harder so that my children can also have Storm Release?" The doors and windows were tightly closed, the blackout curtains were drawn, and the lights weren't turned on. Only a small lamp on the desk illuminated the room. Izayoi and Hinata sat on a chair, admiring the freshly developed photos and complimenting each other. As they chatted, Izayoi suddenly brought up the topic of children. Although he was talking about himself, he looked at Hinata with a mischievous smile. Hinata instantly became flustered, her face flushed red, her eyes darting around, stammering, I don't know." In her mind, she was already imagining what her and Izayoi's children would look like. Their hair color would definitely be the same as hers and Izayoi-kun's. Would their eyes be Byakugan, or Izayoi's blue eyes, or that dojutsu called Tenseigan? Does Izayoi-kun prefer boys or girls? As she thought about it, steam began to rise from Hinata's head, and her pale purple Byakugan gradually turned into a spiral shape. Just then, a hand suddenly rested on Hinata's fragrant shoulder, pulling her back to reality. Izayoi leaned over, grinning. "Hinata, do you remember what I told you before the fight started?" What? Hinata looked puzzled, not understanding for a moment. "A reward, it's a reward." Izayoi said twice, righteously, "I won, shouldn't you give me a reward?" Hinata didn't know whether to laugh or cry, saying, "Izayoi-kun, are you Hanabi?" "I told you, Hanabi is someone we watched grow up. What's so strange about our personalities being similar?" Izayoi raised his head. "Hanabi got the title of top student and also asked me for a reward, didn't she? Now that I've been promoted, shouldn't you give me a reward?" "Then what about mine?" This time, Hinata didn't agree but took the initiative, smiling, "I've been promoted too, what reward are you planning to give me, Izayoi-kun?" "I have one." Izayoi raised his index finger to his lips, smiling, "but this reward will need to wait for a while before I can give it to you." "Wait for a while." Hinata tilted her head, quickly guessing when that would be. So, she didn't ask further but smiled gently. "Then what reward does Izayoi-kun want?" "Photos." That was what Izayoi was waiting for. He immediately got up, opened the closet, and took out 2 gift boxes from inside. His shadow clone had secretly sent these over before the Chunin exams began. Because of Hanabi, Izayoi hadn't been able to hand them over to Hinata as he wished. He stuffed both gift boxes into Hinata's arms, his expression excited. "Hinata, I want to take some artistic photos." Artistic photos. Hinata didn't understand, but she could guess that these 2 gift boxes must also contain clothes. Could it be another sailor suit? Or other original clothes from Izayoi-kun? Hinata felt shy but also a little expectant as she quickly opened the packaging. When she opened the gift box, her cheeks, which had just cooled down, instantly flushed red again, and she turned into steaming Hinata in the blink of an eye. This. Hinata looked at Izayoi with spiral-shaped eyes, her voice trembling. Izayoi-kun, did you make a mistake? These clothes are for Hanabi, right? No, they're prepared for you. Izayoi pinched the collar of a short-sleeved white top with his thumbs and index fingers, smiling. This outfit is called a gym uniform and matches the shorts below. The one-piece swimsuit below that is called a sukumazu. The other gift box contains a cheerleader uniform and pom-poms. Too small. Looking at the few small pieces of cloth that could actually fit into one gift box, Hinata only felt a dizzy spell, as if she were taking a hot bath in the bathroom, full of steam without turning on the exhaust fan, making it difficult to breathe. Please, Hinata. Izayoi put his hands together, pleading in a drawn-out tone, this is my lifelong dream. Her head was muddled and dizzy, and Hinata didn't know how she walked into the bathroom. Although it was only a few small pieces of cloth, it took Hinata more than 10 minutes to come out of the bathroom. Looking at Hinata, who was holding the hem of her clothes and walking out with her head down, illuminated by the bathroom light, Izayoi, who had already activated his Tenseigin to make sure no one was peeking, suddenly felt a heat in his nose. He reached out and touched it, his hand covered in blood. The noble Otsutsuki, only one level away from a pure-blooded alien, actually had a nosebleed. There was no way around it. Hinata's current appearance was more damaging to Izayoi than a bloodline limit fusion. The white sailor collared shirt that fit just right had already made Hinata's face red. Now, wearing a gym uniform a few sizes too small, Hinata didn't faint, thanks to Izayoi's efforts over the past 6 years. If it were her original personality, Hinata would have fainted in the bathroom long ago, her eyes spinning in circles. Gulp. Izayoi, who had already stuffed cotton into his nose, swallowed a mouthful of saliva, his tone full of strangeness and slightly trembling. Hi, Hinata, lie down on your side first, and I'll teach you how to pose. Okay. Hinata, who had been keeping her head down, didn't notice Izayoi's strangeness and responded softly. Then, she lay down on her side as Izayoi asked. Afraid that the girl would faint, Izayoi didn't turn on the lights but used the bathroom and desk lights, directing Hinata to lie down, propping her up with a pillow, making a peace sign with her hands, while he took pictures with the camera, searching for the right angle. Poof! With a click, the shutter brought a white flash, and at the same time, a blood arrow spurted out. Seeing the bloodstains on the blanket, Hinata finally couldn't care about being shy and quickly looked up at Izayoi, who was covering his nose, with a worried expression. Izayoi-kun, why are you having a nosebleed? Are you okay? I'm okay, maybe today's dinner was too hot. Izayoi waved his hand, looking at Hinata with a strange expression, wanting to say something but embarrassed to open his mouth. Izayoi-kun, is something wrong? As if sensing Izayoi's unease, Hinata asked shyly. That. Looking at Hinata's cute appearance, Izayoi couldn't help but press the shutter again, taking another picture. Then, he subtly reminded her, Hinata, have you forgotten something? Huh? Hinata tilted her head in confusion, and seeing Izayoi scratching his head, his eyes somewhat evasive, she subconsciously followed his gaze. Whoosh! In the next instant, Hinata's small face flushed red, her temperature soaring to the limit, and a cloud of white steam directly emerged from her head. Then, Hinata's eyes were filled with spiral circles, and she fainted on the spot. Since being transformed by Izayoi, Hinata's immunity far exceeded the original by many times. Being shy was a common occurrence, and blushing appeared from time to time, but turning into steaming Hinata was rare. As for fainting, it hadn't happened even once. This showed that it had truly exceeded the limit. Chapter 74 Sister-in-law returns, father-in-law is satisfied. After the art photo incident, Hinata didn't appear before Izayoi for several days. In normal times, this was a very rare occurrence. Although she had used a grip strengthener a few times, it was still within Hinata's tolerance. After all, she had 2 layers of protection. But being seen naked and having photos taken was clearly beyond Hinata's limit. The girl's immunity stats these days were probably 0 or negative. Before the stats recovered, she probably wouldn't dare to appear before Izayoi. And those limited edition art photos were also stored by Izayoi in a small password-protected photo album, along with the camera, inside a wristband-type sealing scroll, carried with him at all times. Oni-chan, Nei-san told me to tell you that she's going to train with father to learn more powerful gentle fist secret techniques, and she probably won't have time to come over this month. On July 21st, Hanabi was ordered to come to Izayoi's house. After relaying Hinata's message, she hugged Izayoi's arm and pleaded, Oni-chan, Hanabi is already on summer vacation. Since you're not using your main body to train, can you spend some time playing with Hanabi during this period? Sure, what does Hanabi want to play? Izayoi smiled dotingly and touched Hanabi's head, then pinched her small face. Let me think. Hanabi pinched her chin, and a look of distress gradually appeared on her face. I've been all over the central street, and I'm tired of eating all the delicious food. What should I play? Looking at his little sister-in-law's cute appearance, Izayoi, despite having seen it for several years, was still charmed, and couldn't help but pick her up and put her on his lap. While playing with her braided bangs, he smiled and said, since you're tired of playing in Konoha, how about Oni-chan takes you out on a trip? Really? Hanabi's beautiful eyes lit up instantly, then she shook her head regretfully as if she had thought of something. That won't work, father won't allow me to be away from home for too long. And there's a guard protecting Hanabi in secret. Once I leave the central street too far on my own, that guard will come out to stop me. It's okay, Oni-chan will secretly take you out. Izayoi smiled confidently, go back and talk to your Nei-san, she will convince your father. Then you bring a few changes of clothes, and Oni-chan will secretly take you out. Okay, Hanabi will go back and pack her luggage now. Seeing that Izayoi was willing to have her Nei-san share the pressure for her, Hanabi immediately clapped her hands and nodded, her eyes full of anticipation and longing. Clearly, the little sister-in-law also longed for the outside world. Go ahead, remember to hide the clothes in the ceiling scroll, otherwise you'll be caught before you even leave the house, Oni-chan won't be responsible. Okay, Oni-chan, I'm going back to pack my things now, remember to wait for me. Hanabi nodded repeatedly, then got off Izayoi's lap, ran to the entrance to put on her shoes, pushed the door open, and used body flicker technique, all in one go. About 15 minutes later, Hanabi pushed the door open and entered again. Oni-chan, I'm here. Still wearing that yellowish-brown kimono, Hanabi, with empty hands, threw herself directly into Izayoi's arms as he stood up, and said with a grin, Oni-chan, when are we leaving? No rush, let's go buy some things first. Izayoi looked at the clock on the wall, which showed 11:35. Then he took Hanabi's small hand and walked towards the entrance. Taking Hanabi out of the house, Izayoi went directly to a familiar shop. Yo, little brother, you're here to buy film again. Young people are really energetic, they don't get tired even after taking pictures all day. Uncle, I just want to take advantage of the fact that I haven't come of age yet to record the growth process of myself and the people around me, so that I can recall my youth through photos in the future. You're right, it's a pity that Uncle wasn't as precocious as you when he was young, and he didn't have the talent to become a ninja. Now I've forgotten what I looked like when I was little. Then Uncle, give me a discount, I want to buy 20 rolls this time. No problem, I'll give you a 20% discount. Thanks. After chatting with the shop owner for a few minutes, Izayoi took Hanabi out, then bought some bananas, glutinous rice dumplings, and milk that Hanabi liked to eat, and stored them all in the ceiling scroll. Taking out his pocket watch and looking at the time, Izayoi smiled at Hanabi and said, is there anything else you want to buy? If not, let's go. Don't we need to apply for a village exit permit? Hanabi tilted her head and said. No need, and Oni-chan isn't a Chunin squad leader yet, so I can't apply for a village exit permit. Hearing this, Hanabi said with a worried expression, if we leave like this, will Oni-chan be punished by the village afterwards? It's fine as long as we're not discovered. Izayoi took Hanabi into an alley, bent down and smiled, get on, Oni-chan will take you out. Okay. Hanabi immediately climbed onto Izayoi's back, hugged his neck with both hands, and said with a bright smile, Oni-chan, we can go now. Izayoi got up, and then his figure flashed and disappeared into the alley. As soon as he disappeared, a figure appeared out of thin air in the alley. It was a Byakugan man wearing a green vest. Byakugan, open. Hanabi's guard formed hand seals with both hands, and veins bulged on both sides of his temples. Then he showed a look of surprise. What a fast speed. After saying that, the guard quickly disappeared using body flicker technique. But quickly, he stopped in a forest, his face already covered with cold sweat. Not from exhaustion, but from fright. Because within the long-range vision of his Byakugan, the figures of Izayoi and second Miss Hanabi had disappeared. And if he wasn't mistaken, the location where they disappeared was no longer in Konoha. If he just shook him off and took second Miss Hanabi to the wilderness, it wouldn't be a big deal. But taking second Miss away from Konoha was beyond his level of authority. So, the guard quickly returned to the Hyuga clan to report to Hyuga Hiyashi. I know, you may leave. Hyuga Hiyashi didn't show any surprise, but said expressionlessly. Yes. The guard nodded respectfully, then turned into an afterimage and disappeared. After the guard left, a smile appeared on Hyuga Hiyashi's serious face, and he murmured, "This kid is really getting bolder and bolder. If someone comes to my door, I won't protect you." As a result, half an hour passed, and no one from Konoha came to notify him, the clan leader, that his second daughter had been abducted. Clearly, Izayoi and Hanabi's departure had not been detected by the sensory team. This meant that Izayoi either knew the rotation time of the sensory team, or he could ignore the barrier. Either way, it was a remarkable skill. It was not difficult to see from Hyuga Hiyashi's expression that he was very satisfied with Izayoi, and he did not blame him at all for taking his second daughter away from Konoha without even saying hello. If Izayoi had done this before the Chunin exams started, Hyuga Hiyashi would have been angry. But now, Izayoi's performance in the central tower was no longer a secret in the Jonin circle. He had only just become a genin not long ago, and he had mastered 5 nature transformations, and he had also developed a Rasengan-like ninjutsu without hand seals, and he had done something that the 4th Hokage had failed to do, turning this ninjutsu without hand seals into AS rank secret ninjutsu, and it was still a storm release secret ninjutsu formed by mixing 2 nature transformations. Hand seal secret ninjutsu and no hand seal secret ninjutsu, attack type secret ninjutsu and support type secret ninjutsu, are different secret ninjutsu. Similarly, single target mysteries and group mysteries are also different. 16 Nights Wind Release Mystery is not only a seal-less mystery, but also has a very amazing attack range. Especially since Hiyashi Hyuga also knows that 16 Nights chakra reserves are equally astonishing, this kind of mystery can be released many times. Such strength is already enough to threaten the existence of a cage. Looking at the ninja world, it is also a trump card combat power level. With 16 Nights protection, Hanabi is safer than by his side. And the talent and strength shown by 16 Nights also proved his value, making Hiyashi Hyuga feel that the hope of both daughters not being branded with the caged bird seal was greater. He naturally wouldn't stop his future son-in-law from building a good relationship with his youngest daughter. 16 Nights didn't know what his future father-in-law was thinking. The reason why he took Hanabi away from Konoha was actually because he had no worries and didn't need to be low-key. Now is a special period. The village's target is Orochimaru, and Danzo Shimura is colluding with Orochimaru. Even if they are eyeing 16 Nights, they will not act now. With 16 Nights' talent and strength, even if the village knows that he has left the village, he will not be punished in any way. A ninja who has mastered S-rank mysteries is a trump card combat power in a large ninja village. Defecting from the village is an S-rank missing nin. For Konoha, which is in its weakest period, such a commoner genius is a treasure that they can't even cherish enough. Moreover, as long as 16 Nights' plan goes smoothly, after the Chunin exams are over, Konoha will have no resistance to him. Leaving Konoha, 16 Nights and Hanabi began to look for attractions everywhere, taking pictures while heading to populated areas. At first, Hanabi was just like Hinata and Shino Aburame when they first left Konoha, full of curiosity about the outside world. Whenever she saw something or a scenic spot that Konoha didn't have, she would pull 16 Nights over to take pictures and explore. It wasn't until she was tired of playing and exhausted that she activated her Byakugan to look for a city. As a result, when she came to the town closest to Konoha, she was also greatly disappointed. "Oni-chan, I feel like the outside world isn't as fun as Konoha," Hanabi couldn't help but complain. "It's so backward here, and the hygiene is especially bad." That's normal. After all, Konoha is the Fire Country's military base. The daimyo has to allocate a large sum of money every year as military expenses, as well as commission deductions from various requests. Construction is naturally better than other places. 16 Nights touched Hanabi's head and smiled. If Hanabi wants to find fun places, Oni-chan just happens to know a few prosperous cities. "Do you want me to take you there now?" Hanabi was a little tempted, but she still shook her head and said, "No, let's just do this for the first trip. Oni-chan's affairs are more important now." Hearing this, 16 Nights looked slightly surprised. "Hanabi, how did you know?" "Hehe, I know now." Hanabi first stuck out her tongue at 16 Nights and made a face, then pretended to be sad, lowered her head, wiped the corners of her eyes, and choked. Oni-chan really didn't bring Hanabi out for a trip on purpose. "It really hurt my young heart. Not 10, no, not 100 conditions will be enough to coax me." With a crisp snap, Hanabi immediately covered her head with both hands, squatted down, and cried out in pain, "It hurts, it hurts. Stop it, I didn't even use any force." 16 Nights, who gently flicked Hanabi on the forehead, rarely rolled his eyes and said, "Hanabi, with your acting skills, don't be a ninja in the future. Change your career to be an actor. Start as a child star, and you might be able to compete with Fujika's Yukie for a job when you grow up." "Oni-chan, you're bullying me. Hanabi is going to bite you to death." Hanabi pounced on 16 Nights, wrapped around his back like a snake, and then opened her mouth to bite the flesh on his shoulder. The angry behavior didn't dare to use force, just gently biting and sucking chakra. Seeing that it was still early, 16 Nights carried the little vampire, Hanabi, away from the town and headed to the city where Karen was. The city is called Sakura Street, and it is one of the prosperous cities in the Fire Country, but it is not the commercial city of Tanabata Street, but a tourist city. Just like the name of the city, Sakura Street is planted with a large number of cherry trees, and several cherry blossom festivals are held every year, attracting a large number of tourists. The location is not too close or too far from Konoha. If you use instant body technique at full speed, it will take half a day to arrive. But now there is still plenty of time. 16 Nights is not in a hurry, but uses the Tenseigan along the way to find all interesting places or beautiful scenic spots, and take Hanabi to check in and take pictures. For example, camping in the wild, hunting in the forest, and taking pictures of the harvest. Or stay overnight in a few towns, stroll through the local night market, and taste the local delicacies. If the crowd is crowded, Hanabi also asks 16 Nights to ride her high, showing a proud expression to other children who are also sitting on their parents' shoulders, as if saying, "I have it too." If Hiyashi Hyuga saw such a scene, his heart would definitely be greatly shocked. He is clearly a daughter slave, but both daughters can't let go in front of him and are forced to be precocious. Only by 16 Nights' side will they release their nature. Hanabi, who loves cleanliness, asks 16 Nights to help her wash her hair and braid it every day. As a reward, the sister-in-law will also help 16 Nights scrub his back and wash his hair. After taking a bath, 16 Nights also likes to lie on the bed and let Hanabi use gentle fist to massage him. This was discovered by accident one day last year when 16 Nights and Hinata were practicing and Hinata was massaging him. The Hyuga clan's gentle fist is too suitable for massage. Since then, 16 Nights and the Hyuga sisters have had a tacit understanding. Every time after practicing, 16 Nights will let them bite him to absorb his chakra. And they use gentle fist to massage 16 Nights. For this reason, Hinata and Hanabi have been holding human acupoint charts for a long time, studying some acupoints that gentle fist rarely attacks, and at the same time using 16 Nights to practice exerting force. From the initial clumsiness to the current proficiency. Whether it is Hinata or Hanabi, their massage skills have already killed all the technicians of 16 Nights' previous life. When sleeping, 16 Nights and Hanabi are naturally in one room, one bed, and the same quilt. Just like Hinata can naturally take a nap with 16 Nights, Hanabi often takes a nap with 16 Nights when she is tired and sleepy from practicing at 16 Nights' house. Even the scene of 3 people in the same bed has happened more than once. 16 Nights likes both the big hugging pillow and the small hugging pillow very much. The Hyuga sisters are also the same. With Hinata not around, Hanabi took over the task of waking up 16 Nights. It's just that, unlike Hinata's gentleness and gentle nudging, the mischievous Hanabi either straddles 16 Nights' stomach and tickles his nose and face with her bangs, or grabs 16 Nights' arm and gives him a good morning bite or a good afternoon bite, using the method of absorbing chakra to wake him up. Moreover, before waking him up, Hanabi would also use the camera to take ugly photos of 16 Nights, hide the film, and prepare to wash them out and collect them when she goes back. In this way, after playing on the road for more than a week, 16 Nights and Hanabi, who were closer, finally arrived at Sakura Street. Chapter 75, Gift, Sister-in-Law and Karen. Izanagi-kun, you're here. Izanagi brought Hanabi to the outside of the villa. Before even entering, the girl's voice reached his ears. With a whoosh, Karen's figure appeared out of nowhere in front of Izanagi and Hanabi. Her red eyes, the same color as her hair, stared intently at Izanagi, and then, as if discovering something, her face was filled with a joyful smile. "Yes, this time it's my main body." Izanagi nodded and smiled. "Thank you for your hard work during this time, Karen." "It's not hard, not at all." Karen shook her head repeatedly, her face full of gratitude. "Compared to life in Kusagakure, this place is simply paradise. I'm only helping you, Izanagi-kun, to purchase materials from Sunagakure, yet I get to live in such a nice house and receive so much compensation. I truly don't deserve it." "No, you've been a great help." Under Hanabi's pouting gaze, Izanagi raised his hand and gave Karen a head pat, touching her red hair, which had become very soft and shiny compared to its previous dryness. He smiled and said, "In this world, there are very few people I can trust, and you are one of them. I am very grateful for Kusagaku's short-sightedness. If it weren't for their foolishness, I wouldn't have been able to find my clansmen during the Chunin exams." Hehe, Karen is also very fortunate to have met Izanagi-kun. I will definitely not let you down. Karen thoroughly enjoyed Izanagi's head pat, and at the same time, she smiled foolishly and made a firm guarantee. Looking at Karen, who was practically about to tie a headband with the words, "Loyalty," on her forehead, Hanabi's eyes were thoughtful. So, this woman is Oni-chan's clansman. It seems Oni-chan is not cheating. That's right, if he were cheating, he wouldn't have brought Hanabi along. Thinking of this, Hanabi's hostility towards Karen instantly disappeared. After chatting with Karen at the door for a while, Izanagi led Hanabi into the villa. On the way, Izanagi also introduced Hanabi and Karen to each other. Upon learning that Hanabi was Hinata's sister, who had taken great care of her in the Forest of Death, Karen's goodwill towards her greatly increased, treating her like a younger sister. "Hanabi, you and Karen Nichan can tour the villa. If you're bored, you can also go out and play." Izanagi stroked Hanabi's head and smiled, "Oni-chan has things to do right now. I'll come and keep you company when I'm done." Okay. The precocious Hanabi was very understanding, nodding repeatedly, "Oni-chan's matters are more important. It's fine if Karen Nichan accompanies me. Then I'll leave Hanabi in your care, Karen." Izanagi smiled at Karen again. "Izanagi-kun, rest assured, I will definitely take good care of Hanabi," Karen guaranteed with a serious expression. Thus, Izanagi entrusted Hanabi to Karen and went alone to a locked door. After opening the door, a downward staircase came into view. Stepping down the stairs to the end, there was a spacious basement below. However, right now, this basement was very crowded. Rows of figures stood there, neatly arranged. At first glance, there were close to 3 digits. And that wasn't all of them. Because in a corner of the basement, there was a table with several large sealing scrolls placed on it. These figures were all wearing uniform attire, black cloaks embroidered with red clouds. Most of the figures had bandages wrapped around their faces, their eyes lifeless. They were all ordinary puppets, and a small number were human puppets made from corpses. In addition to the Kurosuke family, there were also some rogue ninja hunted by the shadow clones during this time. Looking at these puppets, Izanagi activated his Tenseigen and walked over, inputting chakra into their chakra cores, like charging batteries, while softly muttering, "Whether the system has a hidden mechanism depends on you guys. Whether the upgrade of the terms is hell difficulty or easy difficulty also depends on you guys. However, the Akatsuki and Lord Danzo will definitely love this next big gift." After fully charging all the puppets in the basement and scrolls, Izanagi returned upstairs and took Hanabi and Karen to play in Sakura Street. On the way, Izanagi became concerned about Karen again. "Karen, how is your body recovering?" "I'm already fine, I'm full of energy now." Karen once again revealed a grateful expression, smiling, thanks to Izanagi-kun's treatment and the medicinal cuisine prepared by the shadow clone. "Then what are your plans for the future?" Izanagi asked. "We have enough materials now, and we won't need supplies for a long time. Do you plan to continue living here, helping me manage the property, or continue on the path of a ninja?" "Of course, no matter which one it is, I will teach you ninjutsu and help you become stronger. I'll listen to you," Karen said with a firm expression. "Whatever Izanagi-kun wants me to do, needs me to do, then I will do it." "I like your answer very much, but I want to know your true thoughts even more." Izanagi raised his hand and stroked her head, smiling, "After all, you are not only my subordinate but also my clansman, my family. No matter what your choice is, I will help you achieve it." Looking at Izanagi's sincere face, Karen's eyes became uncontrollably wet again. Whether a person is good to you or not is never about what they say or what promises they make, but about what they do. Karen fully saw the evil of Kusagaku. She had even seen the future, that she would probably die suddenly one day, like her mother, due to extreme physical weakness. If life in Kusagaku was hell, then life during this time was heaven for Karen. After Izanagi's shadow clone took Karen away from Konoha, he sent her to Sakura Street, not only letting her live in a large villa but also giving her the key to the vault, allowing her to freely dispose of the billions of ryo inside. Knowing that she didn't know how to spend money, the shadow clone took the initiative to buy a large amount of ingredients and some medicinal materials, and also hired a professional chef to make medicinal cuisine for Karen, restoring her severely overdrawn body. Not only that, but the shadow clone also took her to clothing stores and had a large number of beautiful clothes custom made. The fabric of some of the clothes was so expensive that she couldn't afford them even if she did missions for a lifetime. Even the jewelry in the safe was for her to choose at will. After her body had recovered to 70 or 80%, the shadow clone also taught Karen all the ninja basics, which were more comprehensive than those in Kusagaku, as well as the training methods for tree climbing and water walking. He even lent Karen Raiga Kurosuke's thunder blades, guiding her in training in lightning release nature transformation. After she mastered lightning release nature transformation, the shadow clone would teach Karen the technique of stimulating cells with lightning release chakra. He was so meticulously kind, yet he only needed Karen to run an errand to Sunagaku to purchase some materials. He didn't even follow behind her, completely unafraid that Karen would run away with the huge sum of money. This care and trust often made Karen secretly hide away and cry, tears of emotion. The girl had long been captured by Izanagi, becoming an existence like Haku and Kimimaro Kagaya. As long as she could help Izanagi, she wouldn't care even if it meant sacrificing her life. Izanagi was her heaven, her god, her everything. So, after lowering her head to wipe away the tears from the corners of her eyes, Karen raised her head and smiled at Izanagi. Izanagi-kun, I want to be a ninja. As long as I become an all-rounder ninja, I can help you better. Izanagi naturally didn't know what Karen was thinking. Hearing Karen's words, he also grinned and smiled. Okay, then I'll help you become one of the most powerful female ninja. Just as the two were smiling at each other, Hanabi suddenly emphasized her presence. Oni-chan, what about Hanabi? Looking at his cute little sister-in-law, Izanagi couldn't help but pinch her little face, smiling. Hanabi will definitely be the most powerful female ninja in the future too. Hehe, I've remembered it. When I go back, I'll tell Oni-chan that Oni-chan said I'm more powerful. Hanabi made a face, sticking out her tongue and giggling. Izanagi hummed a few times, proudly. What Oni-chan said was in the future, right now your Oni-chan is definitely the most powerful. Why is that? Izanagi suddenly imitated Hanabi's behavior from a few days ago, covering his heart and pretending to be sad. Hanabi actually wants to trick Oni-chan, it really hurts Oni-chan's fragile heart. Not 10 times, no, not 100 massages will be enough to coax it. Oni-chan, I was wrong. Hanabi immediately pounced on Izanagi, rubbing her head in his arms, and then looking up and acting cute. Hanabi promises you, Oni-chan, please forgive me, okay. Oni-chan was just joking, let's go, I'll take you to see the cherry blossoms. Izanagi was once again charmed by his little sister-in-law, couldn't help but flick her nose, and rubbed her face full of collagen. Then, he supported her under the armpits, lifted Hanabi up, turned her around, and placed her on his shoulders, skillfully entering mount mode, taking his little sister-in-law and Karen to see the cherry blossoms. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 76, Jealous Hinata, the official game begins. Happy times are always very short. In the blink of an eye, it was August 5th of Konoha year 60. There were only 2 days left until the official matches of the third exam. After spending half a month playing with Hanabi, Izayoi finally bid farewell to the reluctant Karen with several large scrolls. However, before leaving, Izayoi instructed Karen, Karen, there's a scroll on the desk in my study that hasn't been put away yet. It contains the cultivation method for a technique. After I leave, remember to practice diligently. I hope that when I come back in a while, you'll have mastered that technique. Hearing that Izayoi would come back to find her after a while, Karen immediately perked up and straightened up to guarantee, yes. I won't let you down, Izayoi-kun. Then we'll go back first, goodbye. Karen-ni-chan, bye-bye. Hanabi also waved goodbye to Karen. Karen smiled and waved, watching Izayoi carry Hanabi on his back and disappear in a body flicker technique. At 6 o'clock in the afternoon, Izayoi brought Hanabi back to Konoha on time. So many carriages, and so many people. Walking on the road in the central street, Hanabi looked around and sighed slightly. After all, the official matches of the Chunin exams are the day after tomorrow. Those ordinary people don't know the body flicker technique, so they definitely have to come in advance, Izayoi said with a smile. Oni-chan, Hanabi will definitely be there to cheer you on, don't lose. Hanabi said to Izayoi, clenching her fist. Don't worry, Oni-chan will definitely win. Izayoi stared in a certain direction, his gaze seeming to penetrate all obstacles, a confident smile on his face, and whispered, in all aspects. After taking out the sealing scroll containing the souvenirs for Hanabi, and sending her back to the entrance of the Hyuga clan, Izayoi waved goodbye to Hanabi, then returned home to make final preparations for the grand event that would arrive the day after tomorrow. Konoha, August 7, year 60. The sky had just dawned, and the central street of Konoha began to bustle with activity, gradually becoming noisy. When the sun was high in the sky, even fireworks were set off. Whether they were ordinary civilians dressed in plain clothes, or dignitaries dressed in gorgeous clothes, who traveled by carriage or human-powered palanquin, they all rushed to Konoha's plaza. An hour before the exam, the plaza was already full. Many people who came from other places and foreign countries, but failed to get tickets, even blocked the entrance and argued with the ninjas. After confirming that they really couldn't enter, they didn't leave, but stayed outside the plaza, preparing to imagine the scene through sound. It's a pity that the ninjas' brains are still too poor. They didn't leave a batch of tickets internally, and then scalp them outside, or set up a lottery outside, otherwise they would definitely make a fortune. Izayoi-kun, long time no see. After a month, Hinata finally stepped out of her house and came to Izayoi's house. The side effects of the art photos had long been resolved by the strong longing. The moment she saw Izayoi, Hinata rarely took the initiative to pounce into his arms, tightly hugging his waist, her tone and eyes full of attachment. Long time no see, Hinata. Izayoi also hugged the girl tightly, and even though he felt a strong squeeze in front of him, he rarely had any distracting thoughts. Since the age of 6, the two had been inseparable, and this was the first time they had been separated for so long. For Izayoi and Hinata, who were already used to having each other by their side, and even couldn't live without each other, this month was very difficult. Izayoi was fine, after all, he still had his little sister-in-law with him. As for Hinata, this period of time was really very difficult. Especially in the past 2 days, she had been listening to Hanabi talk about the trip, and looking at the various photos of Izayoi and Hanabi, Hinata rarely felt jealous of her sister. So, when the vacation ended, she couldn't wait to find Izayoi. This separation not only did not weaken the relationship between the two, but became even deeper. After hugging each other silently for a while, Izayoi and Hinata separated, and then started eating breakfast. While Hinata was cleaning the tableware, Izayoi returned to the room, took out one of the birthday gifts that Hanabi and Hinata had prepared for him, which was a white robe with flame patterns, and those large scrolls he brought back from Sakura Street, and walked into the independent bathroom. By the time Hinata put away the tableware and untied her apron, Izayoi had already come out of the room. Immediately, the two walked out of the house together and headed to Konoha's plaza. Konoha Plaza is a spherical open-air building, just like special training grounds such as the Forest of Death. It is one of the places that are not open to the public except in special circumstances. Every time the plaza is open, it is an important festival. Entering the plaza through the contestant passage, the proctor and some of the contestants had already arrived at the spacious examination hall. Looking at the proctor with a senbon in his mouth, Izayoi knew that the protagonist of Shippuden would still not escape death. I thought you two were busy dating and forgot the exam time. Izayoi and Hinata had just joined the team when they were immediately attacked by Sasuke Uchiha's venomous tongue. Hinata was still shy, while Izayoi chuckled. Looking at you, you don't seem to have had a good month. On the contrary, I had a great month. Sasuke Uchiha's lips curled up slightly, and he smiled proudly. If we meet in the finals, I guarantee to surprise you. I'm looking forward to it. Izayoi glanced at Sasuke Uchiha's neck, and after seeing that there was no cursed seal of heaven, he knew that he should have been training with Kakashi Hatake during this period of time, just like in the original work. If there were no accidents, he should have mastered lightning release, Chidori. In this way, it shows that Sasuke Uchiha's lightning release nature transformation has been cultivated to a certain level, and he can start the stage of form transformation to learn Chidori Stream and Lightning Blade. The stronger Sasuke Uchiha was, the happier Izayoi was. Time passed by, and the rest of the contestants also arrived one after another. Just like Sasuke Uchiha was not late, Naruto Uzumaki was not chased by a group of bulls to the examination hall either. On the stands in the VIP seats, Hiruzen Sarutobi and Orochimaru, disguised as the fourth Cage, had also taken their seats. Taking out his pocket watch and looking at the time, Genma Shiranui looked at the 10 contestants in front of him and slowly said, "The time has come. Contestants who have not arrived will automatically forfeit, and their opponents will automatically advance to the next round." Hearing this, many contestants looked at Naruto Uzumaki. Of the 11 contestants, only Dosu Kinuta was absent. Naruto Uzumaki, who won without a fight, immediately put his hands on his hips and laughed triumphantly. Ha ha ha, that guy must be afraid of this great me, so he took the opportunity to run away. Now I'll tell you about the exam rules. Genma Shiranui took out a clipboard, crossed out Dosu Kinuta's name on the list, and said, "You've all studied at the Ninja Academy, and you all know about no rules duels. The rule of the official match is that any means can be used, and you don't have to bear the responsibility for killing the enemy, because the death consent form you signed in the second exam is still valid. So, those who overestimate themselves, it's best to give up decisively at a critical moment, otherwise you'll die for nothing, and don't expect me to take action to save you at a critical moment." Contestant number 2 automatically forfeits, and Naruto Uzumaki, who drew number 1, advances to the next round. Then, Hinata Hyuga, who drew number 3, and Temari, who drew number 4, stay, and the rest of you wait in the contestant area. As Genma Shiranui's words fell, Gaara and Kankuro, as well as Neji Hyuga, left immediately. Izayoi and the others cheered for Hinata, and then walked to the stands in the contestant area together. Great, the first match is Onichan's match. Onichan, Ganbat. Looking at Hinata and Temari who remained on the field, Hanabi in the audience subconsciously shouted loudly. "Hanabi, pay attention to etiquette." Hiyashi Hyuga reprimanded. Yes. Knowing that she couldn't embarrass the clan outside, Hanabi quickly returned to her proper posture, her face serious. "Hyuga Hinata, is that right? Are you really a genin who was promoted this year?" On the field, Temari looked at Hinata, who was clearly 3 years younger than her, but whose figure completely crushed her, and even mature women might not have this kind of capital, and the corners of her eyes and mouth were twitching slightly. Thinking about the information that the other party had a handsome childhood sweetheart who was the number 1 student from enrollment to graduation, and had mastered several nature transformations, and had developed the S-Class Storm Release Ultimate technique. Moreover, after graduation, the two were still teammates, and had never been separated since childhood. Even Temari, as the daughter of the Kazekage and the princess of Sunagaku, couldn't help but feel jealous. It's fine if she has such perfect appearance, inner self, and background, how come even her other half is like that? This woman, didn't she save the world in her previous life? Hinata didn't know what Temari was thinking. However, hearing Temari's words, she couldn't help but feel a burst of shyness. She didn't know why, women of the same age, or even women older than her, always stared at her conscience, and showed envious and jealous expressions. Clearly that is a heavy burden. Of course, this was Hinata's initial thought. Until she found out that Izayoi also liked it, and even had a nosebleed because of it, Hinata didn't think it was a burden that affected her strength, but a capital worth being proud of. Thinking of this, Hinata's shyness disappeared instantly, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. In Temari's eyes, Hinata was staring at her barren capital, revealing a disdainful smile. The princess of Sunagaku was instantly furious. With a bang, Temari took off the 3-star fan on her back and slammed it heavily on the ground, sneering at Hinata. "Young lady from a wealthy family, I hope your strength can make my 3-star fan feel satisfied." And the words, "wealthy family," seemed to open a certain switch in Hinata, making her think of something. Looking in the direction where her sister and father were, the veins on both sides of Hinata's temples suddenly bulged, and she looked at Temari with a serious expression and said, "I will do my best." The eyes of the two instantly converged into a line, sparks flying. The powerful aura also aroused Genma Shiranui's interest. He took off the Senbon, raised his arm and shouted, "Chunin Selection Exam 3rd Round Official Match, Hinata Hyuga vs Temari, officially begin." Chapter 77 Princess vs Princess, the coolest way to appear. 2 stars. As Hyuga Hinata was about to strike, Temari opened her 3-star fan halfway, converting chakra into wind release nature transformation, forming a small tornado that roared towards Hinata. Unlike playing around with Tenten at the central tower, Temari said she hoped Hinata would make her feel excited, but in reality, she regarded Hinata as a major enemy. After all, unlike her younger brother Kankuro, Temari is the eldest daughter of Rasa, the princess of Sunagaku, just like Hinata, bearing the honor of the Kazekage in the village. If the opponent were someone else, losing would just be losing. But she absolutely couldn't lose to a woman from an allied country, especially a young lady from a prestigious clan. 8 trigrams, vacuum palm. Facing the roaring tornado, Hinata simply raised her hand and unleashed a shockwave no less powerful than the opponent's wind release, colliding with it. The air currents generated by the tornado and the shockwave instantly stirred up a large amount of dust. Hayate Gecko instantly leapt back, distancing himself from Hinata and Temari, representing that, as he said, even if someone's life was in danger, he wouldn't intervene due to their status. Whoosh! The dust had just been stirred up, but the next second, Temari scattered it with a wave of her fan. After all, she hadn't forgotten that her opponent was the Byakugan princess who could see through and see far. Unfortunately, she was a little slow. As soon as the dust cleared, Hinata had already pounced in front of her, her fingers, clearly slender as jade, but capable of easily shattering wooden training dummies, and causing instant bleeding even if they touched the human body, were wrapped in a blue chakra flame, stabbing towards her. If hit, Temari's body would instantly freeze, and if her resistance to attacks wasn't good enough, the battle could basically be declared over. However, the next second, Hinata's beautiful eyes widened slightly. Just as her fingers were about to hit Temari, the other party suddenly raised the corner of her lips, and then her figure swayed slightly, appearing several meters behind. This method of movement, it's not just your teammates who can add nature transformation to body flicker technique. Temari seemed to guess what Hinata was thinking, and while showing a proud expression, she fully opened her 3-star fan and shouted, "When it comes to wind release, our Sunagaku is the strongest. Wind release, great sickle weasel technique. Woo woo woo." The gale roared, and the distorted air currents transformed into countless invisible blades, carving cracks on the ground, sweeping towards Hinata. The area of the storm was astonishing, and the speed was unbelievably fast, making it impossible to dodge with body flicker technique. What a powerful wind release nature transformation. Even Hayate Gecko, who had already distanced himself, had to reappear further away, looking at the storm that cut gashes in the ground wherever it passed, and exclaimed slightly. Looking at the chakra hidden in the storm, spreading out like waves, Hinata calmly adopted a gentle fist stance and shouted delicately, 8 trigrams, rotation. At this moment, Hinata's advantage as a chakra glutton was fully demonstrated. Vast chakra gushed out from the chakra points in her body, and under the control of her powerful chakra, as Hinata rotated in place, it immediately condensed to form a huge, ultra-high-speed rotating hemisphere. The storm engulfed the huge hemisphere, and a series of clanging sounds echoed. It was as if countless blades were hacking at a high-speed rotating steel, and were directly bounced away. On the spectator stand in the waiting area, Neji Hyuga tightly gripped the handrail, his eyes trembling. At this moment, he felt a sense of frustration again. Both were rotation, but the energy shield he created was inferior to Hinata's in terms of both volume and quality. Is that the Hyuga clan's secret technique, rotation? It's so big, big sister is so amazing. Hanabi, in the audience, was also stunned. Your gentle fist talent is no weaker than Hinata's, as long as you practice diligently, you will be able to do it in the future. Hiyashi Hyuga encouraged her, feeling gratified, but the shock in his heart was no less than Neji's. He felt like he had saved the whole world in his previous life. How could his eldest daughter and second daughter both have such amazing chakra and gentle fist talent? Moreover, Hinata's changes only started a few years ago, and she wasn't so excellent at the beginning. Could it be that the power of love is really that strong? Or is it that the Hyuga clan's teaching methods are wrong, and Itachi's teaching is the correct one? Little did they know, Itachi had become a great tonic, and it only worked when the Hyuga clan consumed it. Whoosh! The high-speed rotating blue hemisphere didn't last long. As soon as the storm disappeared, the energy ball also turned into blue flames and disappeared. Hinata, who had spun countless times in place, didn't feel dizzy at all, and disappeared as a blur, flashing in front of Temari, who looked astonished, and stabbed with her fingers again. Temari obviously didn't realize that her ultimate move would be blocked so easily. Looking at Hinata, who reappeared in front of her, she didn't have time to use body flicker technique to distance herself, and could only hold the giant fan to block. Seeing this, Hinata immediately changed her fingers into palms, and slapped the open fan surface of the 3-star fan. Boom! The terrifying shockwave instantly penetrated the 3-star fan and slammed into Temari's body. Temari's feet left the ground, and she was blasted away by Hinata's palm from a distance. The shockwave raged in her body, and Temari's mouth flowed with a trace of blood, but she stubbornly endured the pain of her churning internal organs, wanting to use the blood from the corner of her mouth to cast her strongest move. Unfortunately, she forgot that she was in a floating state. Thank you for the guidance. When Temari looked up, Hinata had already disappeared from her sight. Only a soft voice came from behind her. Roar. Faintly, Temari seemed to hear the roar of the King of Beasts. Immediately, Temari felt a hand slap on her back, and then the chakra in her meridians instantly disappeared, as if she had been hit by a set of gentle fist techniques. All the acupoints were sealed, her eyes lost their focus, and she knelt on the ground, as if she would faint in the next second. When a kunai was placed on her neck, the cold light penetrated through the skin into her body. Only then did the meridians in Temeri's body regain chakra flow, and she regained a little spirit. The latest and most complete novel is at 6-9 book bar. The battle is over, the winner is Hinata Hyuga. Hearing the proctor's announcement of the result, Temari first felt a burst of unwillingness, then glanced at the kunai withdrawn from her neck, and couldn't help but show a bitter smile and said, "I lost." As the princess of Sunagaku, Temari was undoubtedly proud. And she also had the strength to be proud. However, the more proud a person is, the greater the impact on their heart once they are defeated, especially when they lose to someone of the same age. Either they will practice more diligently, or they will become depressed. But obviously, the proud princess must be the former. The victorious Hinata didn't comfort the ninja from the enemy village, and after storing the kunai back into the wrist-mounted sealing scroll, she walked towards the contestant passage. Approaching the audience, Hinata heard a lot of cheers, and couldn't help but look in the direction of her father and sister. Seeing Hanabi waving her arms vigorously at her, regardless of her image, and her father not stopping her, and a rare smile on his serious face, Hinata's lips curled up slightly, and her heart was full of a sense of accomplishment. Walking into the dim passage, Hinata quickened her pace, eager to share her joy with Itachi. However, before she reached the stand, Hinata vaguely heard the audience scolding, and couldn't help but look puzzled. What's going on? Clearly, it was cheers just now, why are they all scolding now? Could it be because she didn't thank the audience, or is it aimed at that female ninja from Sunagaku? When Hinata came to Itachi's side, she suddenly realized. It turned out that Kankuro, who drew number 6, chose to abstain. Like Naruto Uzumaki, Shikamaru Nara won without a fight. It's just that, unlike Naruto Uzumaki's automatic advancement, the audience didn't know that the duel just now was the second round. They had just watched a wonderful duel, but the next round someone abstained, which was like eating a good dish, but finding that there was shit mixed in it, disgusting the audience who had rushed over from thousands of miles away and bought tickets at high prices. But no matter how they scolded, Kankuro, who was reserving his strength for the plan, remained unmoved, and even showed a disdainful smile. Hayate Gecko also ignored the audience's reaction and shouted, "Contestant number 6 abstains, contestant number 5 automatically advances. Contestants who drew numbers 7 and 8, please enter the arena quickly." As soon as he finished speaking, sand appeared out of thin air on Hayate Gecko's left side, gradually condensing to form a figure. Seeing this kind of appearance, the audience, who were still scolding and hadn't even heard Hayate Gecko's words, actually those who watched 2 fewer games, suddenly and unanimously quieted down, and stared intently at Gaara on the field. This kind of appearance is not simple at first glance. When did that guy leave? On the spectator stand in the waiting area, Shikamaru Nara and Naruto Uzumaki were also slightly startled. They subconsciously looked at Gaara's position, and his figure had already disappeared. HMPH, making a fuss over nothing. Kankuro smiled disdainfully, with Gaara's strength, even if he kills you, you might not even know how you died. What are you talking about, you painted face cat? Naruto Uzumaki pointed at Kankuro and mocked, you don't even dare to fight Shikamaru, how strong can your companion be? In one sentence, he directly offended 2 people. However, Shikamaru Nara didn't care, but said to Itachi, that guy with the gourd on his back is very unusual, Itachi, you have to be careful. Looking at Itachi, who didn't have a camera in his hand, Hinata vaguely guessed something, but still smiled softly, Itachi-kun, do your best. Yeah, Itachi didn't return a smile, just nodded lightly, and then, under the gaze of Sasuke Uchiha, Shikamaru Nara, and other Konoha 11, as well as Kankuro and Temari, who had just returned to the stand, his feet left the ground, his body floated into the air, and slowly flew towards the arena. This scene stunned not only the examinees. In the audience, it also became silent. Chapter 78 Shocking the whole audience, the mystery of the 3 nature changes and fusions. He's flying. That boy, he can actually fly. Do ninjas even have flying ninjutsu? That's amazing. Those 2 seem like they're not easy to deal with. It looks like this match will be even more intense than the previous ones. Quote. Watching Izayoi, who wasn't surrounded by any wind barrier and was defying gravity with an unknown ability, the audience was silent for only a few seconds before erupting into an uproar. Exclamations, discussions, and excited shouts rang out continuously. Unlike the ignorance of ordinary people, the ninjas were shocked. A flying ninja? Could that kid have learned the earth release, lightweight rock technique from Iwagakure? Is it ninjutsu, a secret technique, or a keke genkai? So it's him, the top rookie of this year, a ninjutsu genius who has mastered 5 nature transformations. If I remember correctly, he seems to have developed the 4th Hokage's Rasengan himself, and even added 2 nature transformations to fuse it into a storm release ultimate technique. Could it be that this flying ninjutsu was also developed by him? What an amazing ninjutsu talent! Quote. Various exclamations also arose among the ninja. This time, even elite jonin like Kakashi Hatake and Might Guy were shocked. Amazing, Oni-chan can actually fly. Hanabi said, dumbfounded. Hearing this, Hiyashi Hyuga, whose eyes were also trembling, immediately looked towards the contestant seating area, veins bulging at his temples. When he saw that the other examinees all had dumbfounded expressions, while his eldest daughter had a faint smile, he closed his Byakugan, his heart unable to calm down for a long time. It seems that Izayoi and Hinata had discovered they were being monitored a long time ago. Otherwise, the information gap wouldn't be so large. 5 nature transformations, the Rasengan and Storm Release Ultimate Technique, and now the Flying Ninjutsu. Neither the guards nor he knew anything about this information. These 2 little ones are really good at hiding things. Konoha is indeed a cradle of geniuses. I didn't expect them to even have a flying ninja, which is rare in the ninja world. Orochimaru also exclaimed in amazement on the VIP seat. Hiruzen Sarutobi didn't speak, but silently took a puff of his pipe, his eyes full of surprise. Truly, too excellent. Lord Hashirama, Teacher Tobarama, your decision was right. The integration of the Senju into Konoha has filled the village's future with hope. The Uchiha Orphan, the 9-tailed Jinchuriki, a ninjutsu genius with unknown bloodline, Konoha will rise again in this generation. Izayoi, who had become the focus of the entire venue, slowly floated down to Genma Shiranui's right side. Genma Shiranui took a deep look at Izayoi, then raised his arm and shouted, "Second round, Izayoi vs Gaara, officially begins." After waving his arm, Genma Shiranui immediately used body flicker technique to leap back, creating distance between Izayoi and Gaara. Even ordinary people could tell from their entrances that this match would be very intense, let alone him, a special jonin who had once served as the 4th Hokage's guard. Whether it was Izayoi or that dark-circled brat with the gourd on his back, their auras and chakra were ridiculously strong. As the match began, Gaara crossed his arms and looked at Izayoi expressionlessly, his expression not changing at all even though the other could fly. It wasn't that Gaara's psychological fortitude was extremely strong, but that he had a layer of sand armor on his body, and the face outside was actually a mask. Underneath the sand armor, his true expression was ferocious and bloodthirsty. As if sensing its master's will, the large gourd on his back automatically opened its cork, and a large amount of sand also defied gravity, surging out from inside and surrounding Gaara, awaiting instructions. The next second, Gaara opened his crossed arms and took the initiative to attack. However, instead of the sand surrounding him flying out, 2 waves of sand suddenly rose from the ground on Izayoi's left and right sides, like hands, trying to envelop Izayoi. Sand binding coffin. As Gaara's voice rang out, the 2 sand waves merged together, twisting into a braided knot. Since becoming a killing machine, countless people had died in Gaara's combination technique of this move and sand waterfall funeral. However, this time, no blood stained the sand red. Gaara looked up and saw a figure in white robes floating in the sky. It was Izayoi, who had disappeared using body flicker technique at some point. Looking down at Gaara below, Izayoi murmured in a voice that only he could hear, "In my current state, I don't have time to play your childish ninja games." After speaking, Izayoi immediately raised his hands, condensing a huge blue and white energy ball, then the white inside this energy ball quickly turned into a deeper blue than the outside. Without even shouting the name of the technique, Izayoi threw this huge energy ball down. Sand Shield. Looking at the energy ball falling down, and the water release nature transformation contained within, Gaara didn't hesitate at all, quickly squatting down and slamming his hand on the ground, consuming a huge amount of chakra to turn the earth into sand, then floating it into the air to form a huge shield, blocking the energy ball. Boom! With a loud bang, the energy ball failed to break through the sand shield, but after sinking in by a third, it exploded and turned into a huge water tornado. The water tornado was like a drill, continuing to drill into the sand shield while spewing out a large amount of water, making the sand heavier. Izayoi didn't expect this move to kill Gaara instantly. Almost the instant he threw the energy ball, Izayoi raised his hand again to condense another energy ball. This energy ball wasn't as big as the previous one, only the size of a basketball. Then two energy balls the size of billiard balls appeared inside the energy ball, their colors quickly changing from blue and white to one blue and one white. The examinees and Jonin who had seen the preliminaries in the central tower were no strangers to this move. It was the S-rank storm release ultimate technique that had recently spread throughout Konoha's Jonin circles. Just when they all thought that Izayoi was going to use that storm release ultimate technique called Judgment again. Under the gazes of these ninjas with wide eyes and changing expressions, another energy ball appeared inside the Super Hurricane consecutive spheres. This energy ball was initially blue and white as well, but in less than 2 seconds, it turned orange-red. Even people who didn't know nature transformation and shape transformation could tell that this energy ball contained the power of flames. Watching the three colored orbs of lightning's white, the sea's blue, and fire's red rapidly rotating inside the energy ball, some people in the audience immediately made secret hand signs. Kabuto Yakushi, disguised as a Konoha Anbu, hid in the back, ready to weave hand seals and cast a technique at any time. The three colored orbs rotated clockwise inside the energy ball, like the commas inside a Sharingan. After rotating several times, one of the blue orbs suddenly changed from clockwise to counterclockwise, colliding with the oncoming white orb, with the red orb following closely behind. The collision of the three orbs was like smashing a glass ball, the three liquids inside surging out, mixing together, and gradually turning into a new color. That was a cyan color with flowing flame light. Ultimate technique, Luminous Blast. Izayoi recited the name of the technique, then threw it down. At this time, the water tornado had just shrunk and disappeared, and a huge dent had appeared in the floating sand shield. As if equipped with a positioning tracking system, the cyan energy ball fell towards that dent. Along the way, its speed became faster and faster. The size of a basketball also increased like a water-filled balloon, and at the same time, its shape changed from a sphere to a cylindrical cyan beam of light. Both were beams of light, but Judgment was a diffuse electrical attack, like a waterfall. And this cyan beam of light, both in appearance and internally, had flowing orange-red flame light, and anyone who had mastered sensory techniques could discover that this beam of light contained the power of destruction. Are you kidding me? People will die. Genma Shiranui, who was not within the range of the sand shield, quickly used body flicker technique to fly towards the high wall. And Gaara also felt the aura of death, as if his mother was reminding him in his ear. Without the slightest hesitation, Gaara wove hand seals and whispered, false sleep technique. Closing his eyes, his consciousness instantly entered a deep sleep. Then the gourd and his body turned into sand, and the earth and the sand shield in the sky all turned into sand waves, engulfing Gaara. Boom! The cyan beam of light landed in the sand waves. A deafening explosion instantly spread throughout Konoha's central street. The audience closest to the explosion covered their ears with their hands, their faces showing pain, feeling that their hearing had been deprived. And the audience standing outside the square were frightened and paralyzed on the ground by the sudden explosion and tremor. The residents of Konoha stopped what they were doing and turned to look in the direction of the square. They saw a huge mushroom cloud rising up. Before they could start discussing, dense shadows shot out from various places, starting to attack the patrolling ninjas. Summoning technique. A shout rang out from somewhere, bringing up an area of stunning white fog, and then a huge three-headed snake appeared out of thin air, destroying everything all the way from the village entrance. On the square, the audience had not yet recovered their hearing, but vaguely saw white feathers falling down, and the strong drowsiness made them fall asleep. The Konoha Crush plan has officially begun. Chapter 79. Human puppets perform meritorious deeds and increase the mechanism of explosion rate. The peaceful and bustling Konoha just moments ago was now thrown into chaos as war suddenly descended, turning the entire central street into a scene of pandemonium. Villagers and ninjas alike were caught off guard by the sudden attack from their supposed allies, the sand ninjas, and the sound ninjas who had infiltrated unnoticed. While fighting back, they swiftly dispersed and organized the villagers to head towards the shelters, following Konoha's safety manual. Due to insufficient manpower, Konoha's side found itself in a disadvantageous position, giving the sand and sound ninjas the illusion that Konoha ninjas were nothing special. Members of the Anbu and the great ninja clans mobilized en masse. The former mostly headed towards the plaza to protect the third Hokage, while the latter protected their clansmen and villagers, guiding them to the shelters at the Hokage Rock. As a result, both the Hokage building and the ninja clans, Territories were left in a state of weakened defense and perception. Poof! A sound like a bursting balloon echoed in a forest in the wilderness. The astonishingly large cloud of white smoke was dispersed by a gust of wind before it could even spread. 301 puppets wearing black cloaks embroidered with red clouds materialized out of thin air. The faces of these 301 puppets were mostly wrapped in white bandages, revealing only their foreheads and eyes, making it impossible to distinguish which puppets were made purely of materials and which were human puppets created from corpses, retaining the abilities they possessed in life. Standing in front of these puppets was a figure also clad in a black cloak. If members of the Akatsuki organization were here, they would surely call out the title, Leader. Indeed, this figure was none other than the diva path of pain. To be precise, it was Izayoi using the transformation technique to become the diva path of pain. The golden level chakra control granted Izayoi powerful chakra manipulation abilities, allowing him not only to fuse 2 or 3 nature transformations into new ones with the Super Hurricane Rasengan, but also to perfect the transformation technique. Sensory ninjas, unless they were powerful enough to identify chakra fluctuations and had previously recognized Izayoi's chakra, would be unable to see through Izayoi's transformation technique. After taking out all the puppets stored in the large scroll, Izayoi wasted no time. With a single hand seal, he created 3 shadow clones with large amounts of chakra, and then his main body vanished in a flash. That's right, the Izayoi who used the transformation technique to become the diva path of pain was the real body. The Izayoi in the plaza was actually just a shadow clone. That was why the shadow clone didn't play ninja games with Gaara. After all, his resistance to attacks was too poor. As soon as the 3 shadow clones appeared, they began to cooperate. The first one used the transformation technique to also become the diva path of pain, and then vanished in a flash, acting independently. The second shadow clone also used the transformation technique, transforming into an ordinary person wearing sunglasses, and then sped towards the Naka River. At the same time, the power of the Tenseigan activated the chakra cores of the 300 puppets from afar. These puppets instantly came to life and scattered like afterimages. Only the small puppet, which was short and different from the other puppets, and also the 301st one, remained standing in place. This small puppet's face was also wrapped in bandages, but its eyes were much more beautiful than the other puppets, not only as crystal clear as gemstones but also with red light flashing inside. This small puppet was Rinmara, who had been turned into a human puppet. The third shadow clone's task was to protect Rinmara and provide chakra to Rinmara's chakra core. At this moment, Rinmara's eyes were radiating red light. Around the 300 puppets that had scattered, red powder suddenly appeared out of thin air, and then their bodies twisted slightly, like a mirage, and suddenly disappeared. Even the Byakugan's clairvoyance could not detect their existence. This was the Byakugan's nemesis, the red eye ability to use chakra to create images to interfere with the enemy. With the help of the red eye, 200 of the puppets, like Hayate Gecko using transparent escape, silently arrived at the central street, watching the three-way ninja battle. At this time, the war had already resulted in many casualties. The streets and rooftops, even the alleys and hidden corners, were littered with corpses that were no longer breathing, or seriously injured individuals who could no longer fight and could only hide. These people hid very well, and some clever fellows even took out the tools they carried with them, blending in with the surrounding buildings. Unfortunately, in front of the Tenseigan's farsight and clairvoyance, they had nowhere to hide. A portion of the puppets began to move. Red powder appeared out of thin air, the puppets' figures were revealed, and they picked up the corpses of dead ninjas before disappearing again. The ninjas who inadvertently witnessed this scene thought their eyes were playing tricks on them, and even suspected that they had fallen into a genjutsu. Before they could investigate, they had to suppress their curiosity due to the enemy's attack. Whether it was the corpses of Konoha ninjas, sand ninjas, or sound ninjas, the puppets did not let them go. As for the seriously injured ninjas, except for the Konoha ninjas, the puppets approached the other ninjas and delivered the finishing blow. Puchi. The blades installed on the puppets ejected, either piercing the ninja's neck, or stabbing into his chest and stirring, or beheading him, but never damaging the heart. To create a human puppet, the complete heart must be preserved, and the heart is used to create the chakra core. None. Still none. The shadow clone standing next to Rinmara saw everything the puppets were doing. His mouth also continuously uttered emotionless words. Clearly, the scene he wanted to see didn't appear. However, the shadow clone wasn't discouraged. Instead, he raised his hand, made a gesture, and whispered, "Initiate Plan B." As if hearing his words, the shadow clone responsible for controlling 300 puppets in the Nanga River mountain cave immediately replaced them with a new batch to finish off the injured. These puppets were all made from corpses, human puppets that retained their former abilities. Moreover, the strength of these human puppets far surpassed what they were in life. This was because the chakra within them belonged to Izayoi, and the one controlling them was also Izayoi's shadow clone. Apart from not having yin-yang release, black receiver rods inserted into them, preventing the use of the Tenseigans abilities, Izayoi could use ninjutsu through the human puppets. So, the shadow clone controlled the human puppets, dividing the work. Some were responsible for finishing off injured ninjas, while others no longer hid, revealing themselves and intervening in the war. In a flash of lightning, a human puppet appeared behind a sound ninja responsible for supporting the sand ninjas. The arm, modified with puppet techniques, ejected a sharp blade, wrapped in lightning release nature transformation, and pierced through the sound ninja's body from behind, twisting forcefully. Such speed. The most. New. Small. Say. In. 6. 9. Book. Bar. First. Hair. The sound ninja didn't know there was a fourth-party enemy. Looking at the blade piercing through his body, he only managed to say this before losing all signs of life. Who is it? An Anbu? No, Anbu don't wear uniforms like that. Who is this guy? Be careful, his body flicker technique is fast, and his hiding ability is strong. Looking at the suddenly appearing human puppet, the leaf ninjas, sand ninjas, and sound ninjas who were fighting nearby all became vigilant. Whoosh! After killing the sound ninja with one strike, the human puppet raised its hand, revealing the empty hole in its palm, and then condensed a dazzling golden light, shooting a light bullet towards the sand ninjas. It's one of us, go. Seeing this, a leaf ninja's eyes lit up, successfully being deceived by the human puppet. Wind release. Just as this leaf ninja was preparing to form hand seals to use wind release to attack the sand ninjas, the human puppet's figure suddenly appeared in front of him, piercing through his body with the same strike. Blood flowed from the wound, staining the clan emblem on his clothes red. A member of the Shimura clan, skilled in wind release. After killing this leaf ninja, the human puppet suddenly stopped in place, no longer moving. Swish! A cold light flashed, and a short sword separated the human puppet's head from its body. Looking at the human puppet with no blood flowing out, the special Jonin who used leaf-style swordmanship to kill it said with an ugly expression, "The Sand Village's puppet, why did it kill its own people?" Losing a human puppet didn't bother Izayoi's shadow clone at all. On the contrary, several shadow clones, including Izayoi's main body, all showed joy. Because, it dropped. In Izayoi and his shadow clone's perspectives, after the human puppet killed the Shimura clan ninja, a green beam of light flew out from his body, heading towards Izayoi's main body. A green attribute, decomposing it would randomly give a two-digit number of points, not even a fraction of a purple attribute. But Izayoi was very happy. Because with his current strength, whether he wanted to drop low-level or high-level attributes, there was only a very small probability. How small? If luck wasn't on his side, even elite Jonin like Zabuza Momochi and Raiga Kurosuke, as well as Kekkei Genkai users like Haku and Rinmara, wouldn't drop a low-level attribute. Similarly, Izayoi hadn't dropped any attributes from Sasuke Uchiha and the Hyuga sisters for a long time. From graduation until now, only Rock Lee had provided Izayoi with 2 blue attributes. But now, the human puppet killed an enemy and suddenly dropped a green attribute for Izayoi. This not only meant that Izayoi could obtain attributes by defeating and killing enemies with human puppets. If this wasn't triggering a very small probability, then it meant that Izayoi's guess was correct. Even if his strength reached the peak, the talent attribute system still hid a mechanism that could increase the drop rate. After all, even the levels of the attributes were something he had figured out himself. Naturally, there were more than just a few mechanisms. When there is a will, there is a way, as long as you dare to think and dare to do. To confirm whether it was triggering a very small probability, the shadow clone immediately controlled the human puppets on the street, starting to indiscriminately attack the ninjas present. They mercilessly killed both sand and sound ninjas. As for the leaf ninjas, they either found opportunities to stun them or sacrificed the puppet to make the opponent lose their combat ability, and then made a move to kill them, giving the surrounding leaf ninjas a chance to save them. After killing several sand and sound ninjas, Izayoi and his shadow clone saw another blue beam of light flying out from the body of a sand ninja wearing a flak jacket, heading towards Izayoi's main body. The mechanism truly exists. Izayoi, who had transformed into pain, couldn't help but smile. Meanwhile, the shadow clone in the Nanga River mountain cave, taking advantage of the fact that Jiraiya hadn't noticed the human puppets yet, and realizing that the human puppets were all wearing Akatsuki uniforms, quickly controlled the few strongest human puppets in the central street, used red-eye concealment to retreat, and all rushed towards Izayoi's main body's location, Route. Chapter 80. I was afraid of being targeted by Danzo, so I killed Danzo first. Few people knew that beneath the surface of Konoha, there existed two surprisingly large underground bases. One was located beneath the Hokage building, and the other was near the Hokage rock, under the mountain and forest. These two bases had many entrances, allowing movement underground and rapid appearances in various parts of Konoha. However, these entrances were all sealed and integrated with nature. Only members of the Root organization and the Anbu could find these entrances and break the seals. Even if someone accidentally discovered these entrances, they would be seen by the surveillance cameras installed nearby, and Anbu would come to drive them away. In serious cases, they might even be marked with a seal or have their memories read. The underground bases were also protected by barriers, making it impossible to spy on them with Byakugan or sensory techniques. These two underground bases were undoubtedly the most hidden places in Konoha. However, in Itachi's eyes, the concealment and seals of the entrances, as well as the barrier covering the entire base, were all just for show. Teleporting to a few meters away from a cliff face, Itachi glanced at a protruding rock above the cliff, then used gravity to lift a pebble from the ground and repulsion to launch it. The pebble turned into a blur, like an armor-piercing bullet, instantly shattering the protruding rock and destroying the hidden surveillance camera. In the surveillance room, one of the screens immediately went blank. Root members noticed this immediately and rushed to report to Danzo Shimura. Danzo-sama, the surveillance at entrance A3 has been destroyed. It is suspected that an intruder has entered the base. Upon hearing this, Danzo Shimura, sitting on a stone chair, slowly opened his left eye, which was not covered in bandages, and said indifferently, "Is it someone from the Anbu?" "It's unclear. The opponent hasn't revealed themselves, but this method doesn't seem like theirs," a Root member replied. "Have Fu or Torun eliminate him. If it's Anbu, then." Danzo Shimura was about to weaken the Anbu's strength as he had done before, but then, as if thinking of something, he suddenly changed his mind and said, "Spare his life and imprison him. He might become one of my subordinates in the future." Danzo Shimura didn't take the intruder seriously at all. During this special period, Konoha's sensory barrier covered even the village entrance. Except for a few high-ranking officials, no one knew the rotation schedule of the sensor unit. Currently, the most dangerous person in the village was Orochimaru, who was already at war with Hiruzen Sarutobi. Danzo Shimura, with Koto Amatsukami as his trump card, didn't even put Orochimaru in his eyes. No one in Konoha was his match right now. Moreover, infiltrating the Root organization's base with this method was definitely the act of a cowardly rat trying to sneak in and steal secrets under cover of the chaos. But the voice that suddenly echoed in his mind made Danzo Shimura's expression change drastically, and he abruptly stood up. "Danzo-sama, the intruder has been found. It's someone from Akatsuki." Yamanaka Fu's voice exploded in Danzo Shimura's mind. Danzo Shimura's face immediately turned ugly as he said, "Someone from Akatsuki. Why would they be here? Why now of all times? Damn Orochimaru." Danzo Shimura's first suspicion wasn't Uchiha Itachi, who was working undercover in Akatsuki, but Orochimaru, who had once joined Akatsuki. After all, Uchiha Itachi was even willing to annihilate his own clan for the sake of his younger brother. As long as Uchiha Sasuke was still in Konoha, Uchiha Itachi would be Konoha's most loyal dog, and it was impossible for him to target Danzo. However, just in case, Danzo Shimura still asked, "Is it Uchiha Itachi?" No, the opponent's yin release chakra doesn't have the scent of Sharingan. It's a man wearing an Akatsuki uniform, with purple ripple eyes and short orange hair, Yamanaka Fu described. Danzo Shimura's breathing suddenly became heavy, and he quickly asked, "Purple ripple eyes, are you sure?" As if sensing the change in Danzo Shimura's emotions, Yamanaka Fu paused for a few seconds before replying, "This subordinate is certain. The opponent has a pair of purple ripple eyes, such powerful eye power. He has already discovered this subordinate and destroyed the surveillance monitor. Mobilize all squads, everyone, and surround that guy with me." Danzo Shimura immediately issued the order, and he himself strode out of the room, his eyes filled with fanaticism. "Rinnegan. That brat from back then actually delivered himself to my doorstep. Then I won't be polite. Under the notification of Yamanaka Fu, who possessed the mind-body transmission technique, with the base protected by barriers and devices, the root members who hadn't gone out to support or fight, nor gone out to escort the villagers to the shelters, immediately turned into black afterimages, flying towards Itachi's location. Itachi watched all of this. Itachi chuckled to himself, "Very good, this way I can wipe you all out in one fell swoop." Immediately, several figures appeared behind Itachi, precisely Kuretsuchi Raiga, who had been made into a human puppet, and his Kuretsuchi clan. Itachi raised his hand and made a coded hand gesture, and the shadow clone in the Naka Shrine Cave immediately controlled these human puppets, rushing towards a certain direction. Rinmara, who was responsible for cloaking the 300 puppets, also turned his head to look in the direction of the root organization, his eyes radiating red light. Itachi's main body then strode towards Danzo Shimura's location. The underground base was very vast, with many ancient buildings from the Warring States period, dimly lit, making it very suitable for hiding. Soon, Itachi arrived at a bridge. At this moment, 4 overlapping shouts suddenly came from all directions. Ninjutsu, 4 violet flames formation. 4 purple, transparent barriers rose from the sides of the bridge, top and bottom. At the same time, figures emerged from the heights of those ancient buildings, or used earth release ninjutsu to stick half their bodies out of the base's ceiling, all simultaneously forming hand seals and uttering a series of shouts. The newest and most complete novels are at Luju Book Bar. Fire release, Fire Dragon Flame Bullet. Water release, Water Formation Wall. Wind release, Great Vacuum Sphere. Earth release, Swamp of the Underworld. Lightning release, Thunderclap. Compound ninjutsu, Lightning Water Dragon Bullet. Various types of 5 elements ninjutsu with extremely high learning difficulty and astonishing power, even compound ninjutsu formed by combining 2 nature transformations, poured down from above the 4 violet flames formation, which hadn't yet fully closed. Even the ground beneath Itachi's feet turned into a swamp, attempting to seal his movement ability. The root organization went all out from the start. Faced with such tactics and coordination, even S-rank missing nin from Akatsuki would feel immense pressure, except for a select few. After all, ninja battles were battles of information. Without information, the best way to deal with the enemy was to overwhelm them with firepower. Even the 5 Kage, except for Onoki, couldn't easily cope with this kind of firepower barrage of high-level ninjutsu. Unfortunately, Itachi wasn't an ordinary Kage-level ninja. He was a Kage-level powerhouse who, like Obito Uchiha with Kamui, had mastered the power of rules. So Itachi floated into the air, easily breaking free from the swamp of the underworld's constraints, opened his hands, and softly shouted, "Almighty Push." Chakra quickly transformed into repulsive force, then compressed to form a transparent green shield, enveloping Itachi. Immediately, the shield shattered, and an invisible repulsive force storm roared out. A power that resembled wind release but far surpassed it, like an adult's hand slapping a bubble. The various ninjutsu pouring down were instantly scattered, turning into energy bodies and flames of various colors, slowly dissipating. After scattering these ninjutsu, the repulsive force storm crashed heavily into the 4 purple transparent barriers, like a wild bull hitting a wooden door. The barrier instantly bulged outward, deforming like an inflated balloon. But very quickly, the balloon deflated and returned to its original shape. The remaining repulsive force couldn't break the 4 violet flames formation, which was capable of trapping Kage-level powerhouses. Ninjutsu, Mind-Body Switch Technique. While Itachi was floating in the air releasing repulsive force, a shout suddenly echoed from the dark shadows. Invisible yin release energy penetrated the barrier and seeped into Itachi's body. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audiobook to stay updated with our latest stories. And never miss out on a great listen.